Good afternoon, everybody. Just 1 second just bear with me here. I'm gonna share my screen and then we'll get started in just a minute here. But while you're waiting, if I could just ask everybody to use your chat function and let us know where you're zooming in from. And that way we can have our presenters know where you're coming from. Oh, there we are. Okay, Edmonton, Fort McMurray. Wow. Excellent. Drumheller. Nice. Bonnyville. People from all over. That's wonderful. Thank you. And hopefully the weather is as nice where you are as it is in Calgary. We had quite a lot of snow on Sunday. It was pretty, but it was snow. And now it's just about all melted. So, but I can't complain. Our folks in Rainbow Lake were just telling me they still had about 21 inches of ice on their lake up there. So lovely. Brooks, hello, Adam. Nice to see you. Okay. Well, I'm just going to get started. So welcome, everybody. My name is Shannon Gerald, and I'm the Communications and Training Manager for Western Canadian Spill Services. And I've got Amy Grenier here with me. She's our training coordinator. She's going to be helping to facilitate this webinar. So I would like to start by identifying that normally we would be taking these presentations on the road. We would be going just to one co-op, but today, situation being as it is, we are able to reach 7 different co-ops. So I see that you guys are coming in from all of these areas, and it's wonderful to know that this is working. So what this means is by completing your orientation and knowledge checks that Amy would have sent out to you, as well as attending this webinar, this will meet your training need for the year. So we're going to be tracking that on your behalf. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to either myself or Amy about how that all works. So what you will receive throughout this presentation are a few documents and a few links. The first thing that Amy will send out is a copy of this introduction presentation. And you'll note that there's contact information for each of those folks at the end. So throughout and at the end. Also, from viewing the WCSS orientation video, it's likely you've already deduced that the website is going to be your most current source of information, all things WCSS. So we've selected a few links that Amy will be sharing throughout the presentation, mostly Trevor's presentation, for you to grab and add to your favorites. You also would have received a link to the case study that we're going to be discussing later today. And while you were there, you might have noticed on our YouTube page that we have a few other videos for you. So those are meant to be supportive of your safety programs, and feel free to use them for your own training. We do love your comments, so we want to know that we're on the right track, and if there's anything that you feel is missing, go right ahead and let us know. Get in touch with me. I can work with our steering committees to identify how we can make those videos available for you. As Trevor's going through his presentation, you're going to receive a preparedness self-assessment tool. I encourage you to go through it yourself, but also to share it with your neighbors in your organization. You might be interested to know the difference in what everybody thinks of your own company's preparedness as it relates to spill response. So, you know, if you're learning that your neighbor might not be as aware of initiatives as you are, there's a perfect opportunity for you to share that orientation video just to spread the word of how your company is involved with spill preparedness. You're also going to receive an incident command system reference sheet that includes the planning P. Trevor's going to talk about that, as well as a critical control point S406. There's no reason, it's just a random pick. So Trevor's going to dissect that for you and have a look at the information that we typically will put and review into a critical control point. Finally, once we're finished the webinar, we're going to have Amy, once she's been able to determine that you've first done the orientation and those knowledge checks at the end, don't forget about those, and that you've attended this webinar, She will follow up with an email that includes your certificate of attendance. And she's also going to provide a link to a debrief questionnaire. So that's a chance for us to, again, find out whether we're on the right track for meeting your training needs. And also, I particularly like to know what you think about your experience with the webinar today. And also, it's an opportunity for you to do some self-reflection just based on what you learned today. So let me just go through the agenda quickly here. Just after the first few slides, I'm going to have each of our volunteer chairs and alternate chairs introduce themselves. Now, we're a little lean today, so I'm going to pretend that I'm some of them. But I would like to point out that I can't replace them. Our volunteers are fantastic. They work very hard on behalf of industry, and they make WCSS what it is. And they bring with them a wealth of information, a wealth of experience. And just so you know, it's by no means an exclusive club. We're always welcoming new volunteers. So if you're looking for a way to find out more about spill response training or spill response in general, maybe trade some stories, who knows, feel free to get in touch with me or with your co-op chair. So following that, we're going to have Mark Zamin with the AER go through a presentation of successes and failures that he has seen on spill sites. And after that, we'll have Les Swelin, a former WCSS provincial chair, walk us through a case study of a pipeline break during freshet on the Red Deer River. And after Les is finished, I'm going to introduce Sherree Dallyn and Brett Franks. They were instrumental in the video that you would have watched prior to this webinar on the emulsion release in a small water course. And that's going to be an opportunity for question and answer period for Les, Sherree, and Brett. After Mark's presentation, we'll allow for questions there too. And after that question and answer period with Les, Sherree, and Brett, we'll take a quick 2-minute break. For those of you who've been to our co-op exercises in person, you'll know that a 5-minute break turns into a 10 or 15-minute break pretty easily. But I'm going to stay pretty true onto this 2-minute break. And then we're going to return and have Trever lead us through an oil spill planning and preparedness presentation for people in leadership positions. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. I'd like to ask you each to do exactly what you're doing. Just keep your videos off, yourselves muted, unless you're asking a question. If you prefer to use the chat function, go right ahead to use to ask questions. We'll address them in order as best we can. Now, if you have a question for a particular person, we just ask that you put their name first so we know who it's for. And otherwise, you can send your question directly to your presenters, or you can send it to Amy Grenier. Just look for her name there and she will read your question. Finally, we do love reactions and comments and stories that you might have. So please do let our presenters know they're doing a great job. I'm a particular fan of the ta-da, but no, it doesn't matter. You just use whatever you want to. So with that, I'm going to lead this introduction actually for the entire Zone 1. Our folks just let me know they weren't able to be here today. So for the time being, I'm Rebecca Wade. She's our Area P chair and Zone 1 alternate chair. She works for Inter Pipeline and she's worked as, sorry, that's my dog snoring. She's worked as an emergency management professional for the past 5.5 years in oil and gas. And she's been committed to WCSS for the past 5. She started out as an Area P steering committee member. And then when Zone 1, so for those of you who are not sure, that includes areas P, Q, and S. When they worked together as a zone committee, she formed part of that steering committee. Now she sits as the Area P chair, and in turn that makes her the Zone 1 alternate chair. So we have asked all of our volunteers just to share some anecdotal information on what they've learned from spill response. So what Rebecca shared was that she has coordinated several responses to product releases to both ground and air. And during those responses, WCSS provided equipment support through their membership. She feels that WCSS is an important partner for industry preparedness through training, plans, awareness, and during response with its equipment program. So in Area P, your equipment is located in Southeast Calgary at the Proactive Environmental Yard. You've got a 52-foot oil spill containment and recovery trailer there, as well as a 16-foot wildlife trailer, 2 workboats, a 40-foot boom cache sea can, and a hydraulic drum skimmer with a power pack. Moving on to Area Q, we've got Mike Peacock. He's the Area Q chair and the Zone 1 chair.
So yeah, Mike Peacock, I work for Crescent Point Energy. I've been in the industry for about 16 years, started off in environmental consulting, then moved over to the producer side. Been with the WCSS for about 4 years, starting off as a steering committee member. I'm currently the Area Q chair and Zone 1 chair as well. So that was a quick ascent because of retirements and turnover in the industry. What I've learned from spill response, just strongly recommend taking advantage of the training and the spill exercises that are offered by the WCSS. They're a really valuable opportunity to get hands-on experience with some specialized spill recovery equipment. Provides you and your team with the skills to deploy the equipment efficiently, effectively, limiting your adverse impacts and saving time and money. So we have 2 equipment storage locations in Area Q, one in Turner Valley, one in Waterton. They're both 24-foot ISRU trailers. You need a 1-ton truck to haul. And our closest regional equipment location is in Calgary.
So Area S chair and Zone 1 alternate chair is Walter Nassy. He also works for Interpipeline. He's worked for the industry for 19 years and has been committed to WCSS for the past 4. And he has sat on the Area S steering committee, now the Zone 1 committee. Now he's the Area S chair and the Zone 1 alternate chair. What he has learned from taking is that he's taking all the spill responder courses by WCSS. So that is a perk in case you weren't aware. When you sit as a chair or an alternate chair, you do have access to WCSS training. You're sponsored to take it. He's also taken the jet boat and airboat training. So he does have a very unique skill set. He's got experience on small and larger spills. And one of the most important things that he's learned over the years is that someone has to take control of the situation so that resources are used in a timely and proper manner. Training personnel through hands-on exercises is imperative to future success should a spill occur on your watch. So in Area S, we've got in Lethbridge, that's our regional location. There's a 20-foot initial spill response sea can, and it's stored right next to a shed. In that shed, you can pack all the contents into a half-ton truck, the bed of a half-ton truck. It's mostly shallow water response equipment and wildlife deterrent and fencing material. Also in Lethbridge, we have 2 workboats there. And then in Brooks, we have a 24-foot initial spill response unit and a 14-foot wildlife trailer. And then in Medicine Hat, a 24-foot ISRU. So that's enough from me. I'm going to pass the reins over to Area G. Terry, I hope you're here. I didn't see you before, so.
I'm here.
Okay,
I was a couple minutes late, so I apologize for that, but I am here. So yeah, I'm the Area G chairman. I work for Ridgeback Resources. I've been in the industry, directly in the oilfield industry, 15 years, and with WCSS in different roles for the last 6. So what I've learned from spill response, like Shannon mentioned, is utilizing the SR training courses that WCSS can facilitate. They're great courses. They teach you all the other things guys are going to talk about, like getting big quick, using ICS as your basis for a response. And then you can get other training as well. I have the Med A3 and boat handling courses as well for spills into water bodies, etc. And then for my alternate is Ryan Pearson. I don't think he can make it to this one today, but he works for Obsidian Energy, has 25 years experience there. as a spill manager and reclamation coordinator. He's been on the Area G committee for 2.5 years and right now holding the alternate chair position. So things he's learned, like I said, get big fast. You can always send things away. It's easy to reduce. But when you need something, if you don't have it on the way already, it's already kind of late. Communication is very important internally, as well with other stakeholders, the AER, DFO, AEP, and FN, and obviously your landowners and land users. And communication with them versus BSing them, as Ryan says, the more upfront and open you are with them, the easier it is, and it'll cause less grief later. And make sure there's always a lead person. They may have lots of folks under them, but spill costs and containment can get away really quick if there's not a chain of command, which is the basis of our response, is ICS or a modified version of ICS. So our Area G equipment is in Drayton Valley. The custodian is Hellhounds. So you can make a quick call to them, not to say they'll always have equipment available to truck it, but there's multiple companies through Drayton Valley that can accommodate trucking a 20-foot skid mounted ISRU CCAN. And then our next closest regional location is in Atchison, where you find all your boats, extra boom, extra equipment, things like that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Bauer. I work for Plains Midstream out of Sherwood Park. I've been in the oil and gas industry for 17 years and involved with WCSS for almost 5 years, where I have been the IJ Alt Chair and Chairman. And what I've learned is stay fresh. These seminars are great if your company puts on any tabletop exercises, full-scale exercises. The WCSS spill responder courses are fantastic as well. Any ICS training you can take. Go check out your equipment that you have, even the equipment that WCSS provides to you. It's great to have knowledge on it, and if you don't ever see it, then when the time comes, you might be a little lost. So just stay fresh. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Jones. I represent Inter Pipeline. I've been in the industry for 13 years, and as best as I can recollect, I've been involved with WCSS for 10 of those. Past roles have been steering committee member, alternate chair. I'm the interim chair for now until we can find a volunteer to fit that for IJ. Zone 3 rep for the executive subcommittee, and I'm also the alternate provincial chair. What I've learned from spill response, you hear it all the time, get big quick, get big quick. It's a great idea and absolutely is the right thing to do, but you better be able to support and store everything and everyone you're going to bring in. If you want to break a response, this is the way to do it. You're going to create low morale, choke up your access route, piss off your stakeholders, increase health and safety risks. You're basically balancing elephants on thimbles for the first couple of days. Never underestimate how much it takes to build a functioning community to deal with a larger spill. So the IJ regional equipment at Atchison, this is where the gold mine is. We've got 3 airboats, 7 work boats, twin engine barge with a bow skimmer, tow vessel, 52-foot Oscar CCAN, 20-foot initial spill response unit CCAN, 40-foot boom cache CCAN, 45-foot boom cache trailer, 16-foot winter Oscar trailer, the inflatable lake boom reel trailer, 400 feet of shallow water boom, 2 shallow drop boom vanes, 10 boom deflectors, the drum skimmer with 7 drum skimmers with the power pack, circus skimmer with a power pack, the air curtain incinerator, and a 20-foot decontamination CCAN.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I'm going to fill in for VR1 today too. Our chair in VR1 is Darren Weimer. He works for CNRL in the Lloydminster district. And he's been committed to the industry for about 15 years and committed to WCSS for 10. So he did also start on the steering committee, not there, but he took on the role of the alternate chair for a few years, and now he is the chair.
Yeah, good afternoon. Scott Nelson, Plains Midstream. committed in industry for 15 years, active member of WCSS for about 5, and been in the roles of a steering committee member and alternate chair. What I've learned, the exercises, be familiar with the tools and equipment in the event you need them. You hear it lots, but you can never be over prepared in the event of an emergency. For equipment in VR1, in Lloydminster, there's a 52-foot Oscar trailer, 2 work boats, drum skimmer with power pack, 40-foot lake boom sea can, 40-foot heavy oil sea can, heavy oil skimmer with power pack. And then up in Lakori, there's a 20-foot ISRU sea can and 16-foot wildlife trailer.
And also in VR1, our alternate chair is Scott Nelson. He works for Plains Midstream. He's been committed to the industry for 15 years and to WCSS for the past 5. He also started out in the steering committee, just like everybody else, and is the alternate chair as of last year. So what Scott has learned from spill response is that it's important to participate in these WCSS exercises to ensure that you remain familiar with the tools and equipment in the event that they're ever needed. And he feels that you can never be over prepared. So VR1, your equipment, we'll start with the regional location in Lloydminster. You've got a 52-foot Oscar trailer, 2 work boats, a drum skimmer with a power pack, a 40-foot lake boom sea can, a 40-foot heavy oil sea can, and a heavy oil skimmer that comes with a power pack. And then up in Lakori, there's a 20-foot initial spill response sea can and a 16-foot wildlife trailer. So I will pass it over to Morgan.
Hello, I'm Morgan Alexander. I work for Wolf Midstream. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, been involved with WCSS for the past 6 years or so. Originally started out as a steering committee member, became the alternate chair, and then later the chairman. I'm currently the Area Y chair, and also the Zone 5 rep for the executive subcommittee. One of the things that I've learned in spill response is do not underestimate the roles of planning and logistics in your emergency response. You need to take a step back and plan the response to make sure people are safe, minimize impact of the event, minimize the adverse impact of the response, and effectively deploy your resources. Charging into a situation without effective planning will be more risky, more messy, and more costly, and you may actually cause unintended harm on the environment. Kevin couldn't join us today, so Kevin's the alternate chair for Area Y. He currently works for Pembina. He's been in the industry for nearly 32 years. And has been committed to WCSS for the past 6 years or so. Steering committee member, was a former chair and is the current alternate chair. And what Kevin's learned is different spill response techniques through WCSS. It's a great place for networking with other company reps and learning from each other. The equipment in the Area Y, we've got the regional unit in Fort McKay, which is a 45-foot Oscar sea can, a workboat, a twin-engine barge. We've got some deep draft boom vane there, or a boom vane there. There's also a 14-foot wildlife response trailer and a 40-foot boom cache sea can there as well. And in Conklin, there's a 20-foot initial spill response unit. It's a sea can, and it's located in a yard that Wolf Midstream shares with IPL.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. So this is our last slide for the intro. I would just like to bring it to your attention. If you're just joining us mid-intro, I wanted to share with you guys that this presentation will be shared in your chat if it hasn't been done already. And just note that there's contact information provided for all of our presenters today. They are a wealth of information, and they are contacts that you're going to want to have listed in your contingency manual and in your ERP. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask Mark to start sharing his. Mark Zamin works with the AER. He's the WCSS contact, and I couldn't believe when I read he's been working with AER for since 2012. So Mark and I have been working together for a very long time, and I can assure you that he means what he says when he's really just there to help. So Mark, please go ahead, take it away. You can share your video too if you feel so inclined.
Excellent. So thank you very much for the introduction, Shannon. Basically, thank everybody for being here today. These webinars are so important. It's the information that's given during these things, the examples that are provided by all the speakers, is invaluable should you have that really crappy day where you are dealing with a release. Like Shannon said, I've been doing this since 2012. I've been there, done that, seen this, seen that, recognized what works really well, what still works but may not be as efficient or effective. What I want to talk about today is basically what we are looking for from the regulator's point of view, things that we see that will make life a lot easier. Also introduce a couple of things that I know industry as in general, when we first started issuing orders, were very, very nervous about that. Those that have unfortunately had those bad days and actually have had orders issued to them, hopefully they've recognized that there is a benefit to working within an order. But start off with, what's the expectations of the regulator? And forgive me, these are my terms, because for those that I've worked with before, you will know that I am not a tie and suit wearing type person. So when you have a spill, it's your mess, you clean it up. The AER, the regulator, we are not there to basically clean it up for you. We're not there to say you must do it this certain way. What we look for is recognizing that it is your incident, it is your responsibility to clean it up. We don't care how you do it, as long as you do it in an effective and efficient manner where it's not causing more damage to the environment. When members of my team, and I should explain that I'm part of FIRST, the Field Incident Response Support Team, when we show up, treat us as firefighters. We're there to help you put the fire out. We are not there as cops. We don't care what caused the incident. We don't care how it happened. We don't care about that. We want to see the public protected and then the environment protected. So we're there to help you put that fire out. We're there to advise you on things that we've seen that work well in the past, might work well in that particular incident. So as I said, I am part of the FIRST team. Understand that we are not tactical. One of the benefits of working in this role is I can be fat and lazy and not really have to worry about too much, as long as I can get through the bush and see what the site looks like. I'm not lugging around all the equipment, stuff like that. So we're not there tactically involved. We're there to support you. Please use us, ask questions, just don't abuse us. This is what we do, and this is the important part. We attend all these large scale incidents that happen throughout Alberta. When we go to those, we're looking at what's working, what works well. It's our job to ensure that industry is doing the right thing. Your job is not to clean up a spill. Your job is to get product to market. And we understand that. So when all we do is go to these large scale incidents, we understand what works, so we can help advise you and say, you know what, I've seen this in this situation, I've seen something like this work better. We're not telling you you must do it, but if you are really aware, you might recognize that we're trying to help you get this done, get the cleanup, get it contained, get it done a lot quicker and a lot more inexpensive for your organization. Our goal is to influence you to success. We don't want to see anybody fail. If you fail, then we fail. And let's face it, we all understand that industry is painted with the same brush by the public. And we want to make sure that we are successful as a group. My team, the Field Incident Response Support Team and the Emergency Management Team at the regulator, we consist of 5 emergency response coordinators. Those are the people that actually head out to the sites. We jump in our trucks at any time of the day and night, and we head to the incident scene to start supporting you. We also have one member of our team that's on call each week from Tuesday morning to Tuesday morning. That is our duty officer. They're the ones that are actually managing everything that happens, who's going where, looks after the entire province, takes in when somebody calls the emergency phone number and goes to the dispatch center. It's the duty officer who gets that and then decides and triages the information and decides what to do with it. We have 2 emergency preparedness assessors, part of our EPA group. They are full-time looking at all the ERPs that industry submits. They audit, they assess, they review. They also will come to exercises to help out or to observe and audit exercises when you do have those. And we also have one member of the 5 ERCs is also our consequence management officer, CMO. Consequence management officer is basically one person that's identified by every agency and ministry in the government, and they support anything that happens with AEMA and the Provincial Operations Center. So when we have the floods, we have wildfires, our CMO will work out of the pocket and basically represent the regulator on what we can help other government agencies when they have a large scale incident. Flip that over, if the AER, if industry has a large scale, and I'll throw out a lodgepole event, a large well blowout, a large publicly impacted incident, our CMO will then become the lead in the Provincial Operations Center, and all the other government agencies, their folks that are assigned as consequence management officers support us and will help us with whatever we need to help then industry get the situation under control. So when the bad stuff happens, whenever that product escapes out of the well, out of the pipeline, catches on fire, whatever the case may be, there are specific plans that in general, and this is not exact and this is not always, but for the majority, we ask for specific plans. We always ask for a wildlife plan, a wildlife mitigation plan. That is, how are you going to protect the wildlife? What are you going to do to mitigate any impacts that might come to them? If wildlife does get impacted, how are you going to handle that? So we look for a written plan, and one of the area chairman during the introduction talked about planning is so important. The regulator understands that, and that's why we ask for these plans, to get you to start thinking, not just at the present, but also down the road. How are you going to manage this situation? So wildlife mitigation plan, a waste management plan. What are you going to do with the impacted soils, the impacted and contaminated water? How are you going to handle all that? But not just that waste. How are you also going to handle, you're going to have workers on site. How are you going to handle the human waste, the consumables? Brown bag lunches. We don't want to invite wildlife into the area. We just talked about wildlife mitigation. So how are you going to handle all the waste on site? We want to see, where are you taking products? Is it a licensed facility that you're taking to downhole it or dispose of it? Containment delineation. How are you containing the escaped product, and how did you delineate it? How are you going to delineate where this is going, and how do we verify that it's not migrating beyond the initial spill impact area? Well, one of the ways we do it is through sampling. So how is your sampling plan? What does that look like? How often are you going to sample? Where are you going to sample? Where's the map? And that's an important one. Where's the map that shows us where your sample points are? Communications, this day and age, and we're experiencing it more and more all the time. We have social media as well as regular media. They are very, very well in touch with what's going out in the province. So when something bad happens, you need to be prepared with your communication plans, not just how are you talking to the media, social, and dealing with social media, what are you putting up on your website, but also your stakeholders. How are you communicating to those people that may be directly impacted or could be impacted indirectly? How are you communicating with those? Well, as the regulator, we want to make sure that the public is being looked after, as well as other industry that might be in the area. How are you communicating with these people? How are you communicating with Indigenous communities? We're working on their lands. How do we make sure that we are communicating and letting them know what's gone on, what's going to go on, and how we're going to deal with it? Remediation plan, that's generally a plan that we ask for that comes much later on, because initially when we first ask for these, which is as soon as we get on site, we're asking for these plans for you to start working on them. A decom plan, or sorry, a remediation plan, you may not even know what you're dealing with yet. So we don't expect that to be right away. All these other plans shouldn't take you long. They're very high level, not into the minute detail. We don't want you getting into the minutia of it. We want to make sure that you have basically thought about how you're going to deal with this incident. A decontamination plan. This actually came out of the area chairman meeting where 2 years ago, or last year, 2 years ago, where it was this group that actually asked the regulator, could you put a decontamination plan in? This is an important one. Because if you have a product that's flowing into a creek and you have workers working up and down the edges of the creek or even in the creek, it's always easy just to step out of the creek. You've got product on your boots, you're stepping onto clean soils, you've now contaminated those soils. You just expanded your spill path. You've also cost the company a lot more money to clean it up. So what are you going to do for decontaminating not just the physical equipment, but also the people? So a decon plan has been requested. I have no problem asking for it. We don't ask for all of them. Some spills you don't need it. It's not totally required. And then other plans can be requested depending on what the incident is. Well blowout is handled much differently than a pipeline release. A fire is handled differently than a well blowout. So depending on what the situation is, we may or may not ask for other plans, but that gives you a good idea of what to ask for. When we talk about getting big quick, don't forget, not just boots on the ground. Have people back in your office, your head office, your regional office, have somebody that understands what is going to be required. Get them to start working on this stuff. You know it's going to be required or asked for. I want to talk a bit about orders. What is an environmental protection order? Why are they important? What does it mean to you? And what do they contain? And this is just going to be a brief couple of slides. It's always interesting when we talk about an order. When the AER first stood up and we started started issuing orders, what was happening was industry was getting their back up and absolutely terrified. We don't want to get an order because that's going to look really bad on us and we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we've worked, and my team has worked very, very hard and diligently on getting industry to understand orders are not what they imply. An order is basically a permission slip. You need authorizations to do anything on site. An order covers all the authorizations. So when we talk about an order, it's a written document issued by an AER staff, and it's done in accordance with the Energy Resource Enactment or specified enactments. Orders are basically used for addressing issues relating to the AER's mandate. When we talk about them, the important part is responding quickly to prevent or stop actual or potential impact on the environment, public safety, and orderly development of energy. So when we talk about orders, for the most part, any activity is going to require some form of authorization. Don't worry about that unless accepted. An order can fulfill the requirement of an authorization and its limitations. So an order basically is saying, you have a mess, you need to clean it up. We want you to clean it up as quickly as possible. Go and do it. If you need to remove those 10 trees to access part of the spill path, you've got an order. You don't need to ask us for permission. Just get it done. We've already given you the permissions to do all that. Like an authorization, the order meets the same legislative requirements. In some situations, authorizations may still need to be obtained regardless of an order being issued. And one of those things that I can guarantee is a wildlife handling permit. That permit, the AER is not able to authorize that. That needs to come from Alberta Environment. So when we're talking about, and those pictures you see is, some of you may remember, that's from the Wabamun spill. But when it comes to orders, please don't get all worked up and worried about the orders. They are there to help you, and trying to get that message through to industry as much as we possibly can. The extras. These are some of the things that make everybody's life a lot easier. Pictures, pictures, pictures. You have an incident before the regulator even gets there. You want to get us to start calming down. Give us pictures. Take pictures of your site. Send them to us. Let us know what we're going to be walking into. I'm out of Edmonton. It can take me 5 hours to get to a site. While I'm going, I obviously will stop for fuel and stuff along the way. I'll stop and I'll check my phone, look at the pictures. I'll pull over if it's necessary to see what I'm walking into. Walking in blind makes it much more difficult. It takes me a while to get oriented and understand what I'm dealing with. Transparency. I always like saying we're from the government, we're here to help. But transparency is so important. I can't help you if I don't know everything that's going on. So please be open and transparent with us. That way my team, when we show up, we understand what's going on. We are not, as I said at the beginning, we're there as firefighters. We're not there as cops. As a firefighter, if you tell me what's going on, I can help you. I'm not here as a cop, so tell me everything. The investigators, those are the cops. When they show up, I don't care what you say to them. I don't even talk to those guys. So don't worry about that. Be open and honest with the first team, because we need to be able to help you. We need to know what's going on. Security, it's becoming more and more, and I don't know whether it's COVID or what's going on, but security at your site is becoming more important. We don't need, and I'm sure your leaders don't want cameras and media walking through your site. Get security set up right away. Keep people out, keep those onlookers. I'm pretty sure it's COVID people, or due to COVID, that people just have way too much time on their hands. So get security set up so people can't start taking their own pictures or walking through your site, causing more issues. You're going to hear, and anytime I deal with WCSS, it's always fantastic because we always talk ICS. Have the incident commander on site. I need to make sure when I show up, the person I'm dealing with, that incident commander on site, they need to have the authority to make decisions. If you're having issues with that, of getting that, I have no problem calling down to your head office, wherever it may be, Calgary, Texas, it doesn't matter to me, to make sure that we get that authority to the incident commander. If your head office wants to be the incident commander, they need to be on site, because we need people who understand the situation and can make those decisions immediately. Stakeholders. Don't forget your stakeholders, and the list is huge. Don't forget municipalities, don't forget your county, don't forget the Indigenous communities that may or may not be very close to the spill site. They may have some of those lands of concern might be part of the Indigenous community. Don't forget your stakeholders as far as other industry landowners, other companies that are working in the area, and of course, residents always. Please know that every spill that happens, if it meets the regulators' criteria, goes up on an external dashboard on our website. That dashboard is viewed umpteen, and we actually track it. There's umpteen numbers a day. We have media hits to that dashboard, especially on slow days. Media is constantly going to it, going, I wonder if there's something that happened today or in the past 24 hours that we can write a story about. So it's going to happen. It's going to be up on the dashboard within 24 hours of us being notified. So just be aware of that. Under Directive 71, every company must have exercises every 3 years. We must have a full functioning exercise. Call us. You have to give 30 days notice, but call us and invite us. But not only that, don't forget Alberta Health, Alberta Environment, RCMP, your local fire department. Invite these folks to your exercise. They may not always show up. Obviously, time is of an essence, and everybody's lacking resources right now. But please reach out to all the different groups that may possibly want to participate in an exercise, or they may actually be involved should there be a real event. I love this slide because when is the emergency over? Or how I like to call it, how do you get rid of me? We have set plans at the regulator, set standards as to how and what we need to see to trigger us to leave. So when there's an emergency and we're at a level 1, level 2, level 3, in order to reduce those emergency levels, we need to make sure that all these things are in place. Make sure you're using ICS, make sure the product is stopped, containment is achieved, and that containment also must be scientifically proven through sampling and everything else. So get containment, delineation, make sure we've got it fully delineated. We don't have any gaps where, quite often we use electromagnetic scans, EM scans, and we don't close in all the sharp edges. We don't know if product is flowed down a little finger somewhere. Make sure it's all delineated properly. Make sure you have good operational rhythm. If you're operating 24 hours a day or 12 hours a day, make sure you've got the bodies in place, you've got those resources, we've got good operational rhythm, everybody understands, everybody shows up at 6 or 7 o'clock, you do your safety brief and move on to the day. And then all those plans I talked about, they have to be submitted. We review them, and it's not the members of the first team that review them. The nice thing about working with the regulator, we have 950 subject matter experts that we can reach out to. So we find people that can review those plans, make sure that they don't have any questions. Once they've all been reviewed, submitted back to you, then we're good to go. We can call this emergency down and you got rid of me. Hopefully never to see me again. We talk about ICS. The AER does operate in an ICS system, but it's actually called the Emergency Coordination Center. So same structure, same colors, everything's the same. Naming conventions are a bit different. Instead of having section chiefs, we have section coordinators. And we still have operations, we still have planning, logistics, all the same things that we want to see out at site. How do you do your part? Actively participate. When something happens, actively get involved. Don't be afraid of us. We don't bite. Like I say, we're not cops. So actively participate, get involved. Make sure that you are working together and being collaborative with all the agencies, with WCSS, within your own teams. Delegate authority. So by delegating authority, what you're doing, and this is mainly towards the incident commander, delegate that authority, delegate down. Too often I see the incident commander trying to do everything on site. Don't do that. You are responsible for the entire site. So if you're incident command, delegate all that work out. You have people that'll do it. If you don't have bodies, bring them in. Support, support, support. Make sure that you have support from your leadership. Make sure that, and if you're struggling with that, we can always help, but you cannot do this. You're not an island. You can't do it on your own. You need that support. Be available. Make sure that as you are on site and somebody calls, or sorry, when you're off site, somebody calls you saying, we've got a spill. I know it's tough. Everybody has families. You have plans, things like that. But if you're available, make yourself available. One of the things that's always a challenge, incidents always tend to happen on Friday, about 4:30, 5 o'clock of a long weekend. It's always hard to get people out to sites. So make sure that you're available and then come for a visit. Go to your local regulator, our field offices, even though we're starting to close some of them down just because of COVID and costs. The AER has amalgamated where we used to have 2 field centers, we now have 1. So Red Deer and Drayton Valley are now 1, 2 different buildings, but they operate as 1 field center. Edmonton, Slave Lake, same thing, they're 1. But if you're out and about, go into for a visit, sit down and talk with either a member of First, inspectors, build those relationships. It becomes very, very important when it hits the fan. You want to make sure that you're not trading business cards on the side of the road with the black stuff running down the ditch. Questions?
The one thing that comes to mind, maybe you could elaborate on a little bit.
Sure.
And before I ask it, I would like to highlight what you said earlier about pictures. Coming from a small team myself, I really value what you said in that you could take 5 hours to get to a site. So give you as much information as possible. I think that's an excellent point to make.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, when you're traveling, when you're en route and you arrive at a site, what are some of the key indicators that you're looking for to know that spill response is well in hand?
ICS. If I can get on site and I can see, I can see that the site has security in place. I can identify who's in charge. Everybody on site knows who's in charge, who the incident commander is. Ideally, if I see a liaison officer as well as an incident commander, that's perfect, because I don't want to bother the incident commander when that person is having to deal with everything that's going on site. So if I can talk with the liaison officer assigned to the regulator, assigned to all the external agencies that could possibly show up, we're seeing Environment Canada start to show up a lot more now. So having a liaison officer assigned to, and it sounds really horrible, I hate using the term, but make us happy. I don't want you to make me happy. I just want you to be open and honest with me and transparent so I know what's going on, how I can help you out. So having a liaison officer is fantastic. If I can see WCSS trailers and on site, if I can see wildlife stuff already out, especially if I've taken a while to get to site, if I can see stuff already happening, then I'm much more calm. It's so much easier. If I get to site and I've been driving for the last 3-4 hours and there's one person on site standing around going, yeah, this looks bad, then I'm starting to panic. I want to see bodies. I want to see action happening.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I can understand that. And I have heard you. I've asked you that before. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Excellent.
Well, thanks, Mark. I hope you're able to stay on for as long as you can. Hopefully you're not pulled away to another incident.
I am on call, but we're good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Super. So I'll just ask you to stop sharing your screen. And then I'm going to ask Les to go ahead and share your screen and unmute. Yeah. Thanks, Les. That's wonderful. So Les, I never had the chance to work directly with Les before he retired, but I was grateful when he agreed to come back and provide this case study at a number of our co-op exercises. So this has been a great way to get a lot of great information out and a wonderful perspective from somebody who's been involved with WCSS and worked in the industry for such a long time. So Les,
and off we go. On Mark's presentation, everything comes back as he's talking to me when we had this spill. And the prime times, they always happen. Our spill was on Father's Day, 2008 at, I got the call about 9:30 at night. So because of my role with WCSS at the time, I had good contacts with, in those days, it was Mike Locke and Al McFadden. And it was quite easy for me to, once we knew what was going on, I make one phone call to each of those guys and we're ready. But this happened a Sunday evening, and you can see this first slide. Can you imagine trying to boom that river to try and catch oil in the river? And that other than the control center shutting the pipeline in very early, very quickly, one of the first decisions that was made was my contact with the, well, I guess in those days it was the ERCB, but the AER. We talked, I called him about, the on-call person, about 9:45 or maybe close to 10 o'clock. And we discussed putting booms in the river. And from what I could see, and he knew me and I knew him, and we agreed that there was no chance of catching anything in this river the way the river was going at that point. So we had to, at that point, we decided that, okay, the lake is our next choice, and that's Glenifer Lake. And I had called Mike Locke at about 11 o'clock that night and told him what I needed for equipment. And I'd called Al McFadden and told him what was going on. And I called my favorite helicopter pilot, and he was in our yard at 6 o'clock in the morning. And Mike Locke's team was on site when we flew the river to see what we had. And this particular slide is looking north. So the water is going away from the camera. And it would have been horrendous had that ERCB inspector pushed back and said, we need to try and boom it. We would have put all kinds of equipment and all kinds of people at risk, but he agreed that we had no chance. And so we were faced with the lake.
Les,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you make your, could you go into presenter mode just so we can see the slides a little bigger? So if you go down to your bottom right of your screen, yeah, there you go, perfect.
How's that?
There, yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
No. So you can imagine if you have a facility somewhere in Alberta that's dealing with a water course like this, you've got special challenges for sure. This kind of gives you a bit of an idea of, this is right at the spill site. So we've got multiple channels. The water is going extremely fast. And because this is June, what had happened, there had been a thunderstorm in the mountains and it had rained really hard. And when the rain came down, it melted a great deal of snow, and all of that water came into the river basin at the same time. So it created what you would probably call a bit of a bump in the water flow. And it comes racing downstream. And just when it gets to where our pipe is exposed and the pipe breaks, well, the oil goes on top of the water on that bump. And as it moves downstream, the river widens out and the oil kind of falls off the bump and gets hung up in the gravel. So if you can see on the top of the screen, there's a small right-of-way running to the, well, that's to the southeast. But this S-bend in the river was never there. We never had that issue. We had problems with this pipe a time before, but we were told that we had lowered it and we had a 1 in 100-year chance of ever having a problem again. Well, it was 4 years later when we had the problem. So from the helicopter the next morning, This is the first thing we saw when we got to the lake. We didn't blacken the lake, but there was oil and you could see the path where it was going. And some of it was hung up in some backwaters and low waters here and there. It's about 20 miles from the line break to the lake. And here you can see where the oil is, or the water is spread out, and the oil kind of got separated from the water at that time and ended up on the land. So we had lots and lots of these type of areas in that stretch of river. And this is where Trever and his crew were doing it. But this is an overhead. That's the Carefree Resort at Glenifer Lake up top there. And if you look close to the water, you can see all the debris, the trees and branches and roots and what have you, that has come down in the spring flush, and it's kind of hung up. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to have to deal with. And we're close to, so you can see the oil there. It's come up on the bank a little bit. The lake itself is down at this time of year in mid-June. It's lower. They want it filled by the 1st of July. So they have the spillways kind of not running full. So they want the lake to come up. So you can see even out in the water, all the trash that's out there that we have to deal with, because we don't know if all of it or just some of it is contaminated. You can see the oil there around the bank that's up on the shore. We were pretty lucky because we didn't really have extreme weather. So light waves just moved it up onto the shore a little. There's a strip of oil there. That picture was taken from the helicopter. And of course, by 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning on the Monday, we had Pembina equipment there and the lake boom. And we were going to work. And here's the WCSS equipment trailer. And you can see on the left side, we've got porta potties set up already. By that time, this is probably, well, noonish or so on the first day. And here guys are starting to put boom down on the boat launch and getting it ready to be pulled out. And here it's being pulled out by one of the WCS work boats. And we had airboats on site as well. They were doing a lot of this kind of thing. And there they're pulling the boom out to run it from one shore to the other. If you're familiar with Glenifer Lake, it's kind of an S-shaped lake. So we're trying to cut the oil off and keeping it on what would be considered the southwest part of the lake. And the spillway is on the northeast corner. And of course, if it comes through the spillway, it's eventually going into downtown Red Deer. So we were working quite quickly to make sure we didn't have any oil getting to the spillway to get out of the lake. We actually ended up with 3 booms across the lake. This was the very first one to keep it in the southwest part of the lake, putting that up. But because of the heavy runoff, this is kind of the trash that we were gathering on the booms. And of course, you can't just ignore that. You have to do something with it. So we had well, here they're putting out the lake boom over by the spillway. Now it's protected there. This is the southwest corner of the lake. This is, the water is coming in from the bottom left of your picture. And we ended up putting another boom out, and we had this trash collector. And I forget just exactly the number of trash that we pulled out of the lake. But we had one of the people that I dealt with that was not with our company, but he lived up in Innisfail, and he would drive to his work site at the Shell Caroline plant every day. And he called me in about the third week, and he said, that lake has never looked so good. You've cleaned all the shoreline off. It looks really good right now. So yeah, okay, well, thanks, Brian, but we just did it because we had to. But here's the, you can see the boat launch kind of in the middle there. And that's where we were. This is all our equipment and vehicles down here along the bottom. And we had a roadblock up on the, by the trees there to keep people out. And it was actually a quite a good setup. And the people at Carefree Resort were, they were a little bit reluctant to allow us to do it to start with, but they were very cooperative throughout the whole exercise. And if you want to get media attention, you put oil in somebody's drinking water and you'll get all the attention you need, for sure. That's just another picture of kind of the landscape near the, there you can see it better. The river is coming into the lake from right in the middle at the top of the screen there. And it kind of comes around and makes an S and goes, you can see the boom between the 2 points here, or kind of that boom or bermed area there. That's the fish pond at Glenifer Lake. This is the farthest west boom that we put in. We had over 3,000, well over 3,000 feet of boom in the lake at one time for a while. This was the one on the far west side. So you can see that workboat doesn't look very big compared to the amount of boom that was out. This is way on the east end of the lake, northeast corner, and you can see the orange boom going across from that point over to the north shore there. And we wanted to make sure that we were not going to allow any oil to get to that spillway. And we never did notice any in that area. So we had caught it before it got there. You got a better, you can see that boom a little bit better there. And what Mark was talking about, these are some of the regulators that were on site. And a bit of advice for when these fellows show up. Don't try and hide anything from them, and don't give them grief, because they kind of know. They've been there before. So they kind of know if you're trying to cover something up. And if you do, they will find it. Don't worry. So you're better off always is to be straight and honest with your answers if they have questions. One of the things that we did very early is we hired an industry expert or scientist to give us the scientific or his expert opinion on what we were going to be dealing with. And this happened on a Sunday night, and we had Dr. Ron Goodwin out there probably on the Thursday, and he took a great deal of the pressure off all the regulators and everybody else with his comments. So it was very much worthwhile to have an industry expert or scientist come on scene and talk to everybody about what he had saw. One other thing that we did that turned out to be very good for Pembina was we conducted community open houses. We conducted one on the Saturday morning, kind of like 6 days later at the Carefree Resort at their community hall. It was packed full, and there was all kinds of questions, and we answered them, and we really got the Carefree people on side, and they were very cooperative up till then, and they were even more so after that. And I think Mark mentioned it. You have to be aware of the sightseers and the people that want to see what's going on, because they at the wrong time they could cause some grief for you that was unintended to start with. And we conducted daily information sessions with the regulators, and sometimes it was twice a day, morning and afternoon, and or whenever required, we were doing that. We had a team on site that was looking after that. So because we're in the middle of June, this is kind of what we're dealing with. So we had the bangers out, people walking the shoreline just to make sure that these birds weren't going to be coming onto the shore, walking through the contaminated soil on the edge of the shoreline. So there was quite a lot of this, but it was we had over 100 people on site at various times in the first 6 days of this spill. And there you can see, that's the middle boom that you can see kind of in the middle there. There's our incident command structure. And Mark was talking about liaison officer, and that was actually my boss that was doing that. And the public information officer dealing with the media was one of our managers out of the head office in Calgary. So this team here that's listed worked very well. You can see Trever Miller's name on the left here. We had Trever hired the first Monday morning. In fact, he was in the helicopter when we made the first run, and he got hired right away. But you can see when you do an incident command system, you may need to, or you can double up or triple up on some of these rules. So just so you see that, you don't have to fill every blank either. But if you need to, you can, and then you can have some people's names on in more than one place. One of the things that we did very early, well, like on Sunday night, I called the helicopter company that we use all the time, or regularly. And we had two of these guys, the first week, we had two of these guys flying out of our compound at Sundre. And it was about a 7 or 8 minute flight across country to the site, to the cleanup area in the lake. So we used these guys an awful lot. And whenever we had somebody that wanted to, the regulators, if they wanted to see what the spill site looked like and whatever, these guys were in the air quite a lot. We had two of them going for the first 7 or 8 days, and then we cut back to one. And we had one for another couple weeks, probably 3 weeks altogether for one of them. This is a bit of an interesting tidbit story. This river was really angry that day when this spill happened. And these folks here, that's their house, they were not home. And the river decided to cut them off and put their house and their farmyard on an island. Well, when I found out about that, I made arrangements for the Saturday morning. We would pick them up and helicopter them. You can see where this river has gone across through the middle of the screen here. Well, it was actually supposed to be in the bottom right-hand corner and go around and then come back in on the east side of that farmstead. But it decided to go across. So it cut those people off from their houses. So we flew them with the helicopter across to their house, and they had to, we said, you can, you know, they said, well, it'll take us half an hour to do what we need to do or whatever. And we said, fine, the helicopter will wait for you. So my manager and I, we didn't go across with the helicopter. We waited 100 yards to the right of this picture. And they went over and did what they needed to do. And they come out, and there was no question that was one of the best public relations tasks that Pembina did during the whole spill. These people were so thankful and so grateful, and they passed the message on to their neighbors about how nice it was that this corporate company would do such a thing. So it was valuable. And now this is getting back to the actual break site, and you can see on the hillside in the middle of the screen, that's the right of way going up the hill on the opposite, on the downstream side of the flow of the pipe. And you can see there's two pipes here, and they were side by side. Well, side by side, they're about 8 feet apart. So our focus was, for the first 2 weeks, was on the lake, because they wanted to open the lake to their campers and boaters on the July 1st weekend. So we focused on the lake, getting everything as best we could there. And so we only left the one boom in, and that was the one on the southwest corner of the lake. We left it in, and we left manpower to make sure it was okay, and had all the signage up so no extra boats would go up that way. And then we started focusing on the river itself. So here's an airboat packed with equipment heading up. As we flew the river with the helicopter, we GPS the oil spots, and the coordinates would go to, well, Trever and his group, and they would go look after those spots. We considered putting some boom in on this river at that point right here, but we soon realized that it was going too fast and we wouldn't be able to do a very good job of maintaining it and catching anything. So we just left it, because it's only about, I suppose it's 6 miles or so from the Garrington Bridge to the mouth of the lake. These are a picture of some of the manuals that we had put together. So we had all the reports that were whoever needed whatever was in one of these reports. So that's critical for sure. When you have a spill, you want to make sure you're documenting and keeping all that stuff. So there's another picture of that fun river. We did have this picture here, a particular river, was probably a month or a little more after the spill. We had the Department of Fisheries and Oceans didn't, or were very reluctant to allow us to put a track hole like this into the water, because if we were going to do a repair on this, we had to find out what we had, if the pipe was broke or cracked or had a hole in it or what. And we weren't 100% sure until we were able to get a diver that could straddle a pipe and work his way out. And then he found it. And then we realized that the pipe was broke and had swung offset, but it only offset itself about an inch or an inch and a half. And we were never 100% certain that all the oil that was in that pipe was gone. We didn't know. So Department of Fisheries and Oceans had trouble giving us permission to take this traco in, and so we could reach the pipe and pick it up or lift it a little bit so we could find out for sure what we had. Well, I phoned our environmental engineer, and I told him, I phoned about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. And I told him that he should call the Fisheries and Oceans folks and tell them that we're not 100% sure if all the oil is out of that pipe. But if it's not, anything that spills from right now forward belongs to them if they're not going to give us permission. Well, it took about 35 minutes and we had permission to take this hoe into the river to find out what we had. We had to divert the river to do the repairs. So we trucked in tons and tons of this shot rock that was various sizes and some of it quite large. So now we're trying to get the river diverted so it goes around our break site. And here we're getting close to having it turned. And of course, when you do that, you become fishermen because you trap fish in this stagnant or dead water, and you have to go fishing. So these guys actually did a pretty good job. They got a lot of fish. It was unbelievable, really. And that 200 meters of river or 250 meters of river that we had blocked off, how many fish were in there? And we used the nets and we just move them over into the real river and away they would go. So now the river's gone down. You can see by this picture, it's the 27th of July. So this is 6 weeks after the spill. But we haven't been able to get to this river. When we put divers in early to try and figure out what we had, and it was just too dangerous. The river was going too fast and we couldn't, there was too much trash in there. We just couldn't put anybody in. But when it got down so they could, they were well before this, they were able to find the break. And the break was about 2/3 of the way out from what you can see here. It was broke and swung to the side just a wee little bit. And you can see the tear on the bottom right-hand corner here. That's the chunk that we had to physically cut a chunk out of the pipe so we could put the sleeve on. So when we tightened it up, it would pull it all together so we could run a pig through there and make sure that we had no oil in that pipe. So we did that on a Friday about noon. And here you can see where we've diverted it right in the middle of the screen. You can see the rocks on that little roadway. That was the downstream part. And if you follow the river back, you can see where we've turned it 90 degrees. And we've got a 250 meter dry zone where we had to pump dry so we could do the repairs. This is when we've taken it out and put it all back. And this was the river or the right of way just before we had a little bit of cleanup yet to do, but this was seeded and we were back going early August. So we were down for about 7 weeks for this repair. And that's the last slide.
Thank you, Les. That was a great presentation as always. I would like to ask just a couple questions directly to you just before, and I haven't seen any questions come up just yet. What was the overall cost of that spill?
Well, it was quite a lot actually, but it was close to 10 mil, but not over 10. It was close to 10 million for the spill itself. You know, we had 100+ people on the job. We had helicopters in the air. We were quite lucky with disposal of contaminated material because the Stauffer New Alta site was not very far away really, and we could truck it there. It wasn't, it was only 15 minutes trucking time to dispose of it. So that worked quite well actually, but still it's a big number.
For sure it is. Yeah. When one of our volunteers at one point had been mentioning that you should probably assume for about $1 million per shoreline, and I don't know if that number has changed or not, but just seeing what you had to deal with, all of those braided channels and right in the middle of spring runoff, must have been very daunting. So
yeah, well, one of the things that we did, and I think we needed to, is we had hired landmen and we made contact with every landowner from our break site to the Glenifer Lake. Every landowner, we talked to them either on the phone or physically. If they lived on site, we physically went and visited with them to make sure that they understood, because for a couple weeks in July, we had the airboats out on the river. And if you've been around the airboats, you know what they're like. They're very loud. So, you know, we're dealing with phone calls, but the people that knew what was going on, because we'd sent land people to talk to them, you know, they understood, you know, we have to do it. So that was a big cost to talk to, 20 miles of landowners on both sides of the river.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
I would like to point out too that the public relations section in our oil spill contingency manual is based on Pembina's response, this one specifically. So I was able to speak with Brad afterwards, and he was able to give us a lot of guidance in that information. So for those of you who have not had a look through that public relations part in the contingency manual, I do encourage you to do it. It's great information.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Brad was very good at with the media, it was his training, and he was good. But one of the things that as a learning, we found that if you're not giving the media some information, they're going to find some. So you have to be prepared to give them some information all the time. If you've got a scheduled media debriefing at whatever time of day, you have to give them something at that time, or they'll look for it. And it might not necessarily be good if you don't give them something.
And in the world of social media these days, there's information out there before you can even blink.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I would like to just invite Sherree to join the panel. I just had a message from Brett right before here. He's actually been called out to a spill, so he's unable to join the panel. But I would like to open up Hello, Sherree.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Les or Sherree, have you got any questions in your chat just yet about your spills in particular? Or Amy, do you have any questions?
No, just Mark made a comment. Thanks for opening up about the importance of stakeholder engagement aspect of response.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, well, I'm going to ask just a few questions. I hope that everybody here has had the opportunity to watch that Washout Creek case study. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work firsthand with Sherree and Brett in the making of that video. I tried not to be too hard on them. I think they did a wonderful job. So I don't know if anybody had any questions, but I would like to ask Sherree, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome when dealing with that spill response?
That spill, as you guys have, if you watch the video, you know, is on Washout Creek. And for us, at least for me, the biggest obstacle was the fluctuating water levels. We had that creek literally can fluctuate by a meter, sometimes more, in a matter of hours. So everything that we installed, everything, all of our decon areas, everything had to be movable really quickly. We had to have extra booms stashed in different places so that in case there was a breach of any of the boom sets that we did have. Yeah, the water levels definitely wreaked havoc on us. Seemed like going in that it would be a fairly standard spill, but with that was very challenging.
Yeah, that does seem to be one of the number one things I hear, at least when I can learn about different spill responses, is just that water fluctuation. You know, it could be the time of year, could be the type of water body that you're working in, because that spill happened in August, I believe.
It did, yeah. And our cleanup lasted about a month. We were finished, but we didn't have there was no real seasonal storms, but the headwaters of Washout Creek are in a big bog upstream. So as soon as that saturates, it just releases water like crazy. So yeah, most of our boom sets that we had access to regularly, we adjusted so that they would float on the shoreline pins, which that kind of helped us more than anything. But yeah, it was difficult. And the fluctuating water levels too, not just from the cleanup perspective, but also from the wildlife perspective. Like we had different wildlife that would come in with different levels, using, like, frogs were initially maybe more of an issue, but after a while we had, you know, problems with beavers downstream and upstream, and just the different water levels.
People in the back.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh.
I think we've just got somebody who needs to mute, maybe, or are they asking a question? I'm not sure. No, we'll carry on.
Yeah, that was it. That was our biggest challenge from my perspective anyway. Yeah.
And well, I guess this question would be for you, Sherree, and then Les. Is there anything that you would do differently on that spill at response?
Yeah, like hindsight's always 20/20. So when you're going in, I always say, like, my team has my full support with what they're going to do. But after the fact, it's always nice to have like a post-mort to see, like, what could you have done differently? Because inevitably it's going to come up with either another spill that you're working on or a spill that somebody else is. So it's nice to kind of get the learning from that. And I think one of the things that we would have done differently, and we've talked about this a little bit, was our decon areas. We definitely didn't have great access, which kind of directed how we were going to clean up that spill. But one of the things that would have changed, if we could go back in time, would be where and how many decon areas we had. you need to make it convenient for your crew too, because the last thing you want to do is have cleaned up like a kilometer of water course and then have these guys trudging back to a decon area through what they've already cleaned up to get to, you know, their next point. So we would have, I think, established more decon areas along the way. We were kind of, again, limited by terrain for us. So some spots it just sucked. Like they had to, you know, go walk a kilometer upstream to get out of the, like, get out of the creek to a decon area. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you're in that situation.
Definitely. I noticed my friend Gary Trask was in attendance. Gary, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I might. I just wanted to highlight a conversation that you and I had a few weeks ago about portable decon kits that you've outfitted with some of your initial response team. I think that's an excellent initiative. Like we've got our decon unit, but we just have the one, and it definitely would not work in most of those places at Washout Creek. It would, you know, in maybe that first area where I met you, but it would be a challenge to fit an entire unit there. So just food for thought for the attendees here. Les, did you have anything that you think you would do differently about that spill response?
Shannon, I can't think of anything. We not differently, but one of the things that really helped us was my involvement with WCSS. I knew the phone numbers. I used the manual the first night to go through to the checklist and get things going. And that was invaluable that I could call Al and Mike, and we were off and running with all kinds of equipment.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times I've heard that from just any of these names I recognize, either being volunteers or having attended several of our exercises, or just being in touch with WCSS.
Yep.
They've all said it's worthwhile, you know, just pay attention to what contacts you have with WCSS, stay up to date, take the training. It's always so important to do.
And it's always the same thing with your custodians.
Absolutely.
Get to know them and get to know who to call and take them for lunch and say, if we have an issue, this is, you're the first guy I'm going to call. So you need to have a working relationship with the custodians as well.
Excellent advice. Thanks for that, Les. I don't know, is there anything like, Amy, are you getting any questions that you wanted to share?
Yeah, there's one here for Les. What would be additional challenges if it was in winter?
Well, I was thinking about that earlier, Amy, and if you're doing this in the winter time, it is way harder. I would have needed probably, instead of having over 100 people, we would have needed probably over 300, because you can't have people out working in winter conditions for 10 or 12 hours at a time without breaks, and so much more equipment. It would be a major challenge. There's no doubt about it. And that's always scary. When I was with the WCSS, we had many of ice exercises, and we would go and we would do a debriefing after, and you know, it was kind of a shake your head kind of a thing. My God, I hope we don't have to deal with this, because that's a big problem for sure.
Did you prevent all access to the lake for boaters, or just the side with a contained oil spill?
No, we had the department, I guess it was Department of the Environment. They put a a no use on the lake for 2 weeks. You know, so we wanted to be out of there by the end of June, and they could take it off, and that would allow the regular boaters and campers to use it. So they weren't allowed to use the lake at all for 2 weeks.
Okay, and he also wanted to know how you cleaned up the oil contaminated gravel spots throughout the river.
Well, Trevor's a good guy to talk to about that. You know, I think they did it mostly by hand and shovel, and they hauled some of it away, and the stuff that they could clean, they did clean and put back. But it was a labor intensive job for sure. And there was, well, I'm not sure how many there was. There was probably a dozen of those kind of spots like that we had to work at, but it would take 4 or 5 guys a day or more to clean up one of those sites. A lot of it was hauled away. A lot of it was cleaned. If they could clean the rocks, put them back, that was what we did. But it was labor intensive for sure.
No kidding. Another one, Peter is asking, what was the cost for the spill and how long was the pipe down?
Okay, the pipe was down from about 8 weeks or 9 weeks total by the time we had the repair and back going. So we had a force majeure, and our producers that were coming into the pipeline were all moving their product in a different way or a different direction while we were down. So that was one of the communication things that you got to make sure that if you're running a pipeline system like we were, that all your producers are aware of what's going on. So, but it's really hard to tell. When we first talked to the producers the very first week to tell them that we were on force majeure, that we couldn't do anything. Well, at that point, we didn't have any idea at all about how long it was going to take to get it back. And of course, you're always kind of optimistic, and you know, we should be back in a couple of weeks. Well, turned out that it was 8 or 9 weeks. So it's really a communication issue that you have to be passing along to those folks on a regular basis. And as far as cost of the spill, I wasn't directly involved with any of that. I would kind of approve invoices, but I wasn't actually adding it up at the end. But my understanding is it wasn't over 10 million, but it was getting close to that.
Thanks. There's one more in the chat, and then I have an email one as well. Pete asked, what size of line, and do you have ESDS on each side of the river?
Well, yeah, we do, but they're quite a ways from the river. We have manual ones on right near the bank or within a half a mile of the river, but the other valves are well, be 2-3 miles away and more than that away. So they are all automated after that, let me tell you.
And the email question, how many trailers were involved? So it's part for you and part for Shannon, if she could answer the other part. How many trailers were involved for WCSS, I believe?
Well, we had the 2 Area M trailers. They were both out. We had, I guess we only had 1 WCS trailer from Atchison, and then Pembina's own equipment out of their big trailer as well. So there would have been, I guess, 3 WCSS trailers on site.
Okay, and Shannon, maybe you can speak to this. Does this impact other areas' ability if they have a large spill at the same time?
No, it doesn't. We've got 36 equipment caches, and incidentally, in 2016, we had done an examination of our worst case scenario. Like, do we have enough equipment to manage, say, multiple spills, multiple large spills? And we found out soon after that, where we had one significant spill happening on the west side of the province and another significant one happening on the east side, we still were able to maintain coverage for the rest of our 500 and some member companies at that time.
Yeah, during the Wabamun spill, I was the provincial chairman at that time, and the rail company didn't belong to WCSS, but they wanted our equipment. So with Al McFadden, we talked about how are we going to protect, and we gave them, I think 3 trailers went out there, and Al had made contact with Pembina and Enbridge and the other companies that had their own trailers to see if they would allow that equipment to be kind of on standby if required. And there was no problem at all. There was cooperation. So, at times we have to move equipment around to provide that if there is a major spill.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that same thing happened again in 2016. Al did reach out to our other member companies that we know that have their own equipment. And again, the support was there. They were more than happy to help however they could.
No.
And one final question, was the root cause Mother Nature?
Was the what?
Was the root cause of the spill Mother Nature?
I would say yes. Mother Nature gave us a curveball in one day. If it would have been a day later, we probably would have noticed it before it happened, and we would have had the pipeline shut down. But because it was a weekend and there was high water that came a lot higher than what we had been expected, and it put, I don't know, 5 feet of water underneath the pipe anyway. So it became a fiddle string vibrating, and that's what caused it to break. So it was a timing thing and Mother Nature for sure.
Thanks, Les. And another anonymous question. Can Les or Sherree comment on the preparedness of each responsible party? Les already mentioned or kind of commented on that. Sherree, do you have any comments? And did they know what to do, and or are the areas they could have been better prepared in?
They were very well trained, actually. They've all been through the spill responder series, the responsible operators that were out there. We set up incident command really quickly, and they filled those roles, what suited the company in the response. So I think that they were very well prepared. Nobody expects to have a spill, so I think it's always a surprise to, no matter who or what company it is, when it happens, it's still okay, this is a situation that they're not probably familiar with, and let's hope that they're not familiar with. So yeah, I think they were pretty well prepared. We scaled up really quickly. We needed the people that we had. We had initially probably 60 or 70 people, crews on site doing cleanup. And as we moved through our response, we scaled both our ICS and the amount of personnel that we had up and down. So yeah, but honestly, having prepared clients makes it so much easier for us as responders too, because when you get out there, you're already working off of a common ground or a common understanding. Everybody's, they're not asking questions or kind of questioning capabilities of their spill responders. It's just, they're there. They know what to do. They know where you fit in and where they fit in and where they need help and where they need to ask for help. So I think, the fact that like WCS is here and you guys have the opportunity to do the spill responder courses, if you get a chance and you haven't done them, definitely go for it, because they'll help you significantly if you're ever in this situation. So
Great, thanks, Sherree. I don't know, did anyone else have any other questions? Did you get any more, Amy?
Just a comment to touch base on the winter one for those of you who haven't had a chance to participate or see the oil under ice exercise. They are extremely valuable from one of our attendees and mentioned that. So
Yes, and I second that. I've been, supporting the steering committees and our instructors at ice exercises for a few years now, and each time it's it's exactly what Les says. You walk away thinking, oh man, I really hope this never happens, because it is a whole different layer of complexity. Having said that, still, just like what Greg said, do take the chance to attend one of our ice exercises if we're able to run them next year. We were going to do that earlier this year, but we opted not to. So I'm not seeing any other questions. Sherree, is there any other information that you would like to share with the group? Oh, here's one. Have any of you ever worked on spills internationally or stateside in your careers? So Sherree, I'll let you answer that.
I have worked on a few different ones in different areas of the States. It's a different ball game down there for different reasons. I definitely am glad that every time I'm there that I'm Albertan, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth for sure. So I don't want to throw them under the bus too bad. It's, you guys are on the right side of the border, that's for sure, in my opinion.
Les, I'm not sure if you'd ever worked on spills internationally.
No, I haven't actually worked on them, Shannon, but I've been to a few international oil spill conferences where I get to see presentations like we're doing today about various parts of the world. And I agree with what Sherree is saying. We have more regulations and tougher regulations here, but it is so much better. It's way better here than anywhere else in the world. I saw one presentation at an oil spill conference one time in London, England, and they were talking about the Soviet Union, a spill in the Soviet Union, and it was a 24-inch crude oil pipeline that ran for like 100 kilometers. And they were putting in X number of barrels per hour, but they were only getting out 60% of it. So instead of the bell ringing and saying, where's this oil going? They just speeded up the pumps to get more oil coming out the other end. And of course, they had a major catastrophe. But you never hear about that in that part of the world. And the way I understand it, talking to people that have been there, it's a pretty regular occurrence.
I'd just like to identify Trever Miller is another one of our instructors. And Trever, I know you've responded internationally. Did you want to add any comments? Just talk about your experience.
No, I think it's just different challenges that you face, and I mean, they have their regulations and we have ours. As Les alluded to, I think we do have more stringent regulations. And it's just working, again, what it comes down to ultimately is working with your regulatory agencies, being transparent with them, letting them know what's going on, how to address it, and you can still get the job done. Have a list of where all your SMEs are, have a list of where all your equipment is. That's essential. They work a different kind of platform down there. They have more on the Osro side where they have oil spill response organizations versus a spill cooperative, and the spill cooperatives definitely make it easier to access training, access equipment, and SMEs. So that's where I've seen it, and I've been all through the U.S. As well. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to discount. I know you've you've been stateside as well. Thank you for that. Okay, I would like to invite Sherree and Brett, sorry, to share your video. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I should have invited you earlier. I wanted to address the fact that you two were instrumental in a spill to Washout Creek, and that's what we made the video about. So that spill occurred in 2008, not 18, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what were some of your major learnings as responders to that spill?
Sherree, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I was gonna say I'll let Brett go first because we weren't here yesterday, but
Yeah.
I think that spill was different compared to what we were used to doing. I mean, it was an inland spill on a small water course, but because of the fluctuating water levels, we had changing conditions literally minute by minute sometimes. So we had to adapt how our equipment was set up and where it was set up and what we were doing for wildlife mitigation. So as far as learnings go, I mean, every day was kind of what we were used to or what we're trained to do, but it was a little bit different than what we were normally doing. So I think we learned to adapt pretty fast on that spill and just kind of take it as it came, but also kind of implementing what we already knew.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that too, there was, with the changing water level, safety was a pretty big concern. It wasn't deep enough for boats by any means, so you don't have the water level changes like you do it in the river, like your Pembina spill. They make a big difference when it's ankle deep and then it all of a sudden is waist deep. Your safety is pretty paramount in those situations, and you got a bunch of people that are trying to clean up a spill and do the best they can, and you got to slow them down once in a while. And yeah, think about the safety of the responders quite a bit. And on something like this, which I had never dealt with something like this, where it's yeah, like boats, you're on a river, the water level doesn't matter as much, but something like this, you can lose some of the people we had out there pretty quick.
You guys did point out in the video the level of training that your responders had. Would you say that that it was good training all across the board? Was there anybody that you needed to bring up to speed?
A lot of the responders, I should say, and the client had some pretty good trained people, and they knew what they're doing. They're all local. A lot of the operations folks are all local, which obviously helps for response and contacts of people to get out there ASAP and start working on the spill. The labor crews, obviously, they're not trained in like specifically in spill response, but a lot of them were pretty experienced oil and gas folks. So they all knew kind of we taught them pretty quick within the first couple of days the task. Each person or each group kind of had their own little task and to only worry about that task. So yeah, they got pretty good at it by the end of it. Each one of the folks out there, and I think they all kind of started to like it by the end too. But as far as training goes, the biggest thing was having the client, the operations folks, and then the responders were all trained pretty extensively. So helps a lot, obviously.
I think too, using like the incident command system and having those teams that were specific, like they were sticking to that task day after day. So like Brett said, we noticed a lot of them starting to take real pride kind of in what, like, that was their thing and they were good at it, and they were, you know, went from being like, oh man, we have to do this every day, to like, yes, we get to do this every day. It was sort of them. I don't know, it was kind of cool to see the labor crews start taking pride in what they were doing and being part of something like that. So that was really cool on this spill for sure.
Yeah.
Something that stuck with me pretty well, still obviously does. One of the laborers actually kind of, we were cleaning up the spill, and I can't remember who it was. One of the people out there was like, we're good. Next kind of section or whatever. And guys like, no man, we this is our backyard. We're gonna do a little better here and spend the rest of the day, which was nice. Like, this was probably day 20 of them washing rocks, and obviously they cared about what they were doing to kind of hang around for another day to finish it up. So
yeah, that's great to hear. And well, yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up. So a lot of the responders would be local to the area. Les, I never asked you this, but did you find that in your group of 100, were they mostly local people? And also adding to that, since you did need to depend on boats, did you find that you had an adequate number of certified boat operators for your spill?
Yeah, we did. Generally, they were with Trevor's group, and Pembina had some boat operators trained as well, but most of them were from Trevor's group.
And most of them from Trevor. So did you, like, the folks from Pembina who operated in the area, did they take part in that response too? Like, were they able to give you some of that local knowledge?
Yeah, we probably had a little over half of, like, my staff directly involved. And then a lot of the labor type guys came from not the Drayton Valley office, but the contractors out of Drayton Valley.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Super. I'm just wondering, like, what was the biggest obstacle that you each, so I'm going to start with Brett, and then I'll ask Sherree, and then Les. What were the biggest obstacles that you needed to overcome?
I don't want to keep hammering home the water levels and the change of conditions. That was the biggest one. With land-based spills, obviously, the land isn't changing for the most part, unless you've got some crazy rain or something. But that was probably the biggest, was just adapting to the changing conditions. And like Sherree said, it's kind of, it was crazy. Within an hour, you've got a foot difference in water level sometimes. And it didn't really correlate with rain that much. Like, you'd think, okay, 5 hours after it's been raining really hard, the water's going to go up. It could be 12 hours. It could be an hour later. So the conditions were definitely the hardest. And obviously, coming with that, you've got to have boom sets that are, they can fluctuate with the water levels too, which is, we've kind of found some slick new ways of doing that on the fly, obviously. And with the water levels going up, there's a lot of debris coming down this small little, it seems like a tiny little creek at sometimes, and then it gets pretty big pretty quick. So yeah, that changing conditions obviously would be the biggest for me anyway.
How about you, Sherree?
Yeah, I agree with Brett. The changing conditions were like wreaked havoc on us sometimes. And I mean, as far as cleanup goes, there was areas that we were doing scat. So we were inspecting the water course from the break point all the way down to its confluence with the North Saskatchewan River multiple times a day. And there was, because the water levels changed so quickly, there was areas that were previously not exposed that were. And so we'd have, we'd go from our cleanup methods being maybe like cutting vegetation to now we're washing rocks. So it was really hard to deal with. And I think for us too, the other thing that made it a little bit more difficult was access. We didn't have great access anywhere along that creek. So most of our work was by hand, and we were, there's places where you couldn't get a boat in there. So what didn't matter if we had one or not, we were walking that creek and cleaning up everything by hand and helicoptering out tote bags full of material that we had to remove. So yeah, I think the terrain and the fluctuating water levels were probably the biggest obstacles.
Yeah, speaking from having met you guys there, I can see very much how you would have had some access issues there. Les, how about you? What were some of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome?
Well, I think one of the things that happened to us that we were, in hindsight, we were lucky because we didn't have trouble with sightseers up at where we were working at the lake, because we were using Carefree's dock area, and they had a gated community. So it was pretty easy. There was nobody that came into our site that was not there that we didn't know about. But back at the break site, we had a dickens of a time trying to keep security going there. We had canoes coming down the river with, we had signage everywhere on the river, but some people decided that the signs didn't apply to them, and they'd come down the river, and we had one couple upset their canoe right in our work site, kind of, because they decided they wanted to see what we were doing. And so people management at the break site was a challenge for sure.
That's interesting. I know one of the things that we do try to say in our training, and some of the first things you do when you're setting out boom, is to set out marker warning buoys. But not everybody pays attention to that, and it's true. And when there's something happening in the environment, the initial response is for general public is to go and check it out, see if they can be helpful. But in some cases, they can make things worse. So,
yep.
Shannon, there's one from Glenn on both Washout Creek and the Preparedness spill. If you had it happen tomorrow, what would you have done differently?
I know what I would have done differently. I think hindsight is always 20/20, right? Like, I never question people who are in the field, boots on the ground, because they're the ones that are seeing it firsthand. So you got to, take their word for it and support them as best you can. The one thing that I would have changed is how our decon was set up. For us, that was something that, access was very difficult. So we had guys trying to keep control of containment, or I should say decon, and not having them walk back through shoreline that we'd already cleaned up or water that we'd already cleaned up. And in some cases that meant that they had to travel quite a long distance through the water to get to the next decon point. So I think I definitely would have set up more smaller decon stations along the way, so it gave them more options or more opportunities to kind of get out of there, but not track oil all over the place.
Yeah, I can kind of second that. I think when people go to a spill, not all they care about, but the main thing is cleaning it up. And decon seems to be kind of second thought. And when you've already got it halfway cleaned up is when decon kind of seems to come into play, which is kind of backwards, obviously, which I was glad that Mark mentioned that they're requesting decon plans. So people start thinking about it right away. Yeah, the access was terrible. So we actually had some pretty slick decon set up after. We were just using tote bags, and guys would take their oily waders off in the bag and then put them back on in the bag. And then once they were no good, they would just go to the disposal in that bag later on. So it actually worked out pretty good after. But yeah, like Sherree said, hindsight's 20/20. You got to make decisions when you're out there that seem to be the best, and sometimes they're not, and you got to just adapt and switch. But for that one, this one in particular went pretty quick and pretty smooth, all things considered. So
Yeah, well, I think that's the same with us. Ours went about as good as it could be expected if you were dealing with something like this. One of the things that happens though, when you're a pipeline company, you've got all kinds of customers that are feeding into your pipeline. And when you have an incident like this, you're forced with the force majeure and there's nothing you can do. And it's hard to get your own staff to contact your customers to say, we're out of business and we don't know. The problem is we don't know how long we're going to be out of business. It turned out that it was 2 months, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, we were out. But the first phone calls to our customers say, well, we don't know, but we're probably going to be out for a couple of weeks. But you got to be really, you got to make sure that people can get going with other alternatives. If you tell them it's 2 weeks, well, sometimes they wait. And then if you tell them it's going to be another 7 or 8 weeks, well, then they're on the panic button. So it's a tough call.
It's an excellent point, Les. I'm just seeing an extra note here from Glenn. Being a guy from the field, it means a lot that you recognize the importance of the field operators and listen to them. So thanks for that. I don't have any other questions, but Amy, did you have any other questions in your chat?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
Shannon, I have one comment.
Yes.
The field operators, when there's a line break or a spill in the field, and you're the first one there, you're the incident commander by default, right off the start. So you got to kind of get a little bit comfortable. You might not be that way 24 hours down the road, but when you're the first one to find it or the first one there, you're it every time to start with.
That's absolutely true. Thank you for pointing that out, Les. And in your experience, I don't think you were the one to find the spill. You had made the call at 11:30, but how much time had gone by before you became the incident commander?
Well, not much. The control center closed the valves and called me kind of at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
So because I'm the area supervisor, I'm it right off the bat.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, that was lucky.
Yeah.
Shannon, did I see Kale on here too?
You did, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Kale was out there with us too, and I think Kale, he really helped us out a lot. So thanks, Kale.
Yeah.
And he helped a little bit.
Yeah, Kale says hi. Hi. Actually, Kale, I said I didn't want to put you on the spot, but please do join in if you have anything that you would like to share about your experience. He didn't do his hair today. That's okay. You don't have to share your video. But if you don't want to say anything, that's okay. I realize I might be putting you on the spot. So
I just kind of wanted to go back to Glenn's comment there about the operations folks. I can't stress enough how much field operators know about the area and the people and the equipment and all of that. Like the best resource possible. You could be the best responder in the world, but if you're ignorant and don't listen to them and take their help, you're not going to make it anywhere. So we appreciate you, Glenn. Actually, yeah. We couldn't do our jobs without the help of everybody out there. It's a pretty big operation, a big team that has to make a spill successful. So yeah, operation one for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, boots on the ground, no other place he'd rather be. That's good. It really is just an amazing community that each one of us here is part of. So I do hope that you guys are all feeling that. no matter what you do for oil and gas, you do a good job. I actually would like to acknowledge that we hit 100 attendees today, so that's fantastic. Brett, I would like to ask you if you can comment on how Mother Nature might have affected the spill that you worked on.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody here has kind of watched the video that we did there a while ago, but dealing with the release we had, being a kind of a shallow, small inland waterway, the water level fluctuations from rain are probably the biggest factor kind of determining how we were responding to the spill. You like with Les's spill that he just talked about, you're in boats for the most part, and water fluctuations, obviously they're a big deal, but not as much as these small inland water ones. We were dealing with water that was ankle deep, and then about an hour later, it could be waist deep. So safety was pretty big for that. Yeah, I'd never seen that in my life. Things like you get about a meter water fluctuations within about a day out there. So yeah,
it's got to be quite a shock. What were some of the roadblocks that you encountered like when you were trying to do your initial containment and recovery? What were some of the initial roadblocks that you ran into?
So obviously, like I said, the Mother Nature was probably the biggest one. We had to be pretty creative with boom deployment and
seeing who's here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Les.
Yeah, so boom deployment, we had to be pretty creative with allowing the boom to raise quite a bit. Normally you're stuck pretty good, and you obviously give a little bit of room for movement, but with what we were dealing with, it was pretty crazy fluctuation. So that was one of them. Access was probably the other biggest issue we had. We had about 4 locations we could access the creek, and we had about 7 kilometers worth of creek to work on. So most of the actual work in the creek, you had your 4 access locations, then they were walking like a couple kilometers each way just to kind of continue daily activities. And then obviously with cleaning the spill and all the oily debris and everything that we were taking out of there, we actually used a helicopter to long line. Like if it was oily logs, we'd cut them up to where they could pick them up and bring them to a staging area, or we used tote bags, like 1 cube tote bags to fill completely with oily veg, and even kind of the foam that you're skimming off out at the boom sets and whatnot. So those were the biggest things I've dealt with in my life anyway on that one.
So you both actually had helicopters that you needed to work with, and I believe, Les, you had mentioned that you already had a pre-existing relationship with that helicopter pilot, so it was a fairly simple process to call them up. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we used them like we used to fly the pipelines with the helicopter at least once a year. So I rode with that pilot for quite a few years, and then I knew that where to get a hold of him and where he lived and how long it would take for him to be there and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, it was important that we have that connection ahead of time.
For sure. And so Brett, what was the case for you guys? You guys as the response company, was it you who had connected with the helicopter, or was it the responsible party?
It was the responsible party, but the location we were in, it's a pretty small and tight-knit community, so it's pretty easy for us to get a chopper, at least one. We only had one at a time, but a couple different companies, because they were busy fighting fire and doing their normal work too. But yeah, it was, I think a lot of people kind of get scared when you're on a spill and you say helicopter, and I think they just see dollar bills just flying away. But it's one of the quickest and easiest things you can use for places with poor access. The money saved on other spills that I've used them on is crazy.
Amy, do you have any questions in the chat?
Mark asked, did any boom sets fail and did redundant booms help containment? Les's response was redundant booms were a peace of mind. Is that different for you, Brett?
That's Mark knows how many booms we put out on this one, but for ours, well, for any of them really, you want a few sets of initial containment boom, and then as you have time, even just being able to section areas off, like we were obviously doing scat on this one, and you can almost count your or do your scat divisions based on your boom sets, because you can wash towards there, you can kind of clean up to your extra boom, and then having contingency boom well past your last kind of known contamination is big. It's pretty easy to put in once you get a kind of a skilled crew and everybody gets used to it, and it can help a lot. If it's like with our fluctuating water levels and the amount of debris that comes down, even like your Les's spill, that it's crazy what debris comes down and washes out boom like nothing. So yeah, redundant booms, redundant's a good word. They sound like it's kind of pointless, but it's not. We even actually, on this one, we had 2 different spots where we dropped boom. With the chopper, we long lined it in, dropped it right where we would potentially stage it if needed, and we never did. Didn't even unravel the stuff. So it's things that seem like they're kind of a waste of time really aren't, and you find out pretty quick, and it's better to be a lot more prepared and than kind of playing catch up.
Yeah, I think as our equipment manager would say, it's better to have it than and not need it than need
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the peace of mind by having that extra boom down is worth a lot to the people that are making the decisions.
Absolutely. And I see Mark here. He said he can attest it was well done. Yeah. So
Thanks, Mark.
I'm just inviting anyone else to ask any questions while we have Les and Brett available here. I think one thing that I've learned, at least this week of running the webinars and listening to these presentations, it seems very clear to me that ensuring a solid relationship with your contractors, with your community, with your custodians, these are all incredibly important things to establish well ahead of time. So I've heard it both from Brett and also from Sherree and Les, and also from Trever. Just go ahead and get to know these folks now, and yeah, and establish that relationship now. Les, did you want to add anything? Okay. And Brett, is there anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. Something to kind of point out, but that we talked about yesterday more. So a lot of these releases, like especially the one we were on, it's these operators and laborers and everyone that's helping us on the spill. It's their backyard. So it's their opinions are pretty important because they're going down to the creek and playing around in there on their spare time. So I know to some folks, if you don't live around there, you're in and out and it's just another job, but kind of taking it from the stakeholder even and everyone else's point of view is pretty important too. It's just a different way to look at a spill response, I guess I should say.
That's an excellent point. Thanks for that, Brett.
There's one last question, looks like for Mark. At what point did the AER issue the order to either spill? Les says within 2 weeks.
I don't know, to be honest, if we actually had an official order on ours.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
There was no official order on that one. Les's that Pembina one was just before my time, so I'm not even sure what happened. If there was an order, if there was an order, it would have actually been issued by Alberta Environment. It wouldn't have been the regulator.
Yeah, there was one, Mark, to us at Pembina, and it was I forget exactly when it was, but it would have been within the first 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
it was looked after and cleaned up, and they signed off on it fairly soon after that as well.
Yeah, and that would have come from Alberta Environment. Jurisdiction was different at that time.
Yeah.
And so I would like to introduce Trever. I've been working with Trever since 2007, and it's been wonderful the whole time. So I really do value what Trever brings to the table. He teaches me something every single time I talk to him. It's great. Trever, I'll just let you go right ahead and take it over.
Thanks, Shannon. Well, good afternoon. We're going to be discussing a little bit on planning and preparedness here. And so, you guys you just heard from Les and Sherree and Brett just on, some certain incidents, and you're like, well, yeah, that's an off chance that they're going to have one of these. But one thing that we've all learned from industry in the last little while is it's not a matter of if you're going to have one, it's a matter of when. Now, it's not meant to be pessimistic or, not looking at other things. This is just the nature of the beast. We could do everything possible to try and prevent these things from happening, right? We can have our good SCADA programs out there, our integrity programs, smart pigging, integrity digs, maintenance, that type of thing. But some of the things that we can't account for is Mother Nature. And those are two prime examples of it's not a matter of if you're going to have one, it's a matter of when. And those are in the, during freshet type seasons, banks are washing out, that type of thing. So what we want to ensure that we're doing in order to have like a good comprehensive emergency management program is have a little bit of this understanding that it's not a matter of if you're going to have one, it's a matter of when. And so we need to make sure that you have some planning and preparedness in place prior to this happening. So when we look at the four fundamentals of a comprehensive emergency management plan, is the first one that we want to look at is mitigation, right? That's understanding your corporate liability and your efforts to prevent and define the incident through a detailed risk assessment. And then it filters over to preparedness. Do you have the correct resources available to that incident command team? Do you have them readily available at your fingertips 24/7? And then once you know that you have that, then it goes into the response. And that's having trained personnel to complete the required tasks set out by incident command. And then we're going to, the fourth and final one that we're going to look at, excuse me, is the recovery. How do we determine how a company will manage the fallout of the incident and ensure continual improvement? And so when we start looking at mitigation, one of the first things that you kind of want to do is do a cold eye review on your entire operations, right? So some of the items that you want to tackle within that cold eye review is what's at stake. It's company image that's at stake. It could be your share values for you and your stakeholders within the company and the public. It's that public confidence and potential, and ultimately at the end of the day, the cost. There's always a cost to spills. Spills should not be an open checkbook by any means or stretch of the imaginations, but they will cost you some money. And so you just have to know and understand what those stakes are going to be as part of this cold eye review, because then what it falls down to is what are your risks that you're willing to take at the end of the day. And what are some of those risks? It's proximity of your facilities and infrastructure to sensitive areas such as communities, rivers, lakes. It could go that much further. As part of your risk could be volume. What's my volume of risk? What, am I willing to risk? Okay, I'm only running 10 cubic meters down this line a day. That's the worst that could happen to me. No big deal if it hits a river. Or is that still a risk because you got downstream communities that are pulling water out of there, or landowners and cattle, et cetera, and on. So you have to really know your risks of what you're dealing with there. Another thing that you want to look at as part of your cold eye review is what systems do you have in place for that mitigation? We talked about corrosion inhibitor programs, talked about SCADA systems, daily housekeeping, smart pigging, integrity digs, and system upgrades. Those are all there. But again, I can't stress enough, you're not going to account for Mother Nature. She's got a way of throwing a kink into your plans at all times. you know, just going back down to Washout Creek, the Pembina incidents that you guys just heard of, you know, that's freshet, that's erosion, that's moving that soil away from those banks, exposing pipelines. It could be something else. It could be something of some geoactivity. That geoactivity could be, what about any underground earthquakes? We may not feel them up top, but hey, you know what? They're going to happen. They happen kind of all the time, not frequently, but they do happen. And so what's that going to do? Is that going to shake something loose downstairs? Next thing you know, cause a lot of pressure, moving that back up to surface. And next thing you know, it's you get a sand blast up through your pipe and you're eroding away your piping system. And now you have a release. And or to right-of-ways, you know, you have a multi-use right-of-way. You got a really good idea that at some given point of time, there will be a release to that. Multi-use pipeline right-of-ways is a lot of unconsolidated soils within there. And if you have a lot of springs, natural springs and stuff, you know that those are going to be there. So again, what I'm saying is we have a lot of mitigation strategies in place. It's just we can't always account for Mother Nature. And that's a big component of why you should be doing your cold eye reviews for your programs. You need to start looking at those worst case scenarios and be realistic with those worst case scenarios. Small releases can be manageable, but large scale releases, they're going to test your system. And you may identify the gaps within your plan. And what I mean by that is take those worst case scenarios and understand what they're going to be. You know, is it going to be a worst case scenario? I'm talking, is it going to be a catastrophic failure or a full bore rupture of your pipeline? You know, I'm not just talking about, you know, a 1 and 2 split on beside your weld where you have some kind of stretching because the pipe's been stretched because you got sloughing along your right away. It could be a full kind of 10 and 2 split. It just moves out through pressure, through weld fatigue, whatever it's going to be. And if you're in proximity to those systems or communities, you have to really be realistic about what those worst case scenarios are going to be. Because again, it's not a matter of if you're going to have one, it's a matter of when. And if you can understand that, saying, and don't have that mentality, oh, it's never going to happen to me. Have that mentality of, okay, you know what, it could be. We could have, this could be our worst case scenario. But at least you realize that. And now you can start planning around it. Now you can say, okay, well, I know that this is a potential here. How do I start managing it from this given point point in time going forward, so that when it happens, you're going to be prepared for it? What is the company's relationship with the public, the stakeholders, the surrounding communities? You know, there's been a lot of emphasis about talking about having your land person going out and talking to all those local landowners along your right-of-ways. That's essential. That's essential for them to know and understand that you have operations within the area, and that they have a contact should a release happen, you know, so that your land persons are out there, or you know, all your pipeline right-of-ways have all the signages up onto them, and you know, when a crude oil pipeline, and if something spooky happens, contact this 1-800 number. Those are essential out there. And then ultimately, you know, Mark talked about having a communication plan. What does that communication plan look like? That's you know, if you're going through your cold eye review and you're looking within there and you're like, well, I don't have a communication plan. Maybe that's something that we should start thinking about now. You can have all those systems already pre-canned, have that communication plan already pre-written and placed within your ERP or your contingency manual, whatever, wherever you're going to house that documentation. So when the time comes, you're not trying to scramble to create one or find somebody within your company to create one. You already have a pre-canned communication plan. So again, just when you're going through those cold eye reviews, it's just some of the things that you need to be looking at and looking for. What resources do you have access to, as far as what equipment, training, contractors, and support are you tracking on a frequent basis? If you look to the WCSS oil spill contingency manual, what you'll find into there is a list of contacts, such as regulatory contacts, you know, fire, ambulance, that type of thing for localized areas. You know, but is it going to give you your your downstream receptors of a potential spill, like ATCO? Do you have that type of contact information? Or if you got a line that's with underneath an ATCO line, do you have that contact information readily available, so that if a release happens, you know that you're going to be doing work underneath them or within proximity of those lines, and you can readily contact them. As far as the equipment, again, having access to that equipment, you may have your own equipment caches out there that are there to help bolster your response. That's great. Just make sure that it matches your type of response, right? So the equipment that you're getting, you need to make sure that if I just looked, and this is my worst case scenario, and this is my highest risk, and it's within a small creek system that just goes for 40 some kilometers before it goes into a small lake, just make sure that if you're having access to that WCSS equipment, that it's going to be the right equipment for what your need is. And so what I mean by that is, when you're going through your cold eye review, you need to have a look to be able to say, if this is my product and this is my worst case scenario, and that based on this worst case scenario, do I have the right equipment to respond to that worst case scenario? And that's what you really have to do. And so one thing, when you're going back through your cold eye reviews, is if you're saying, hey, you know what, I'm into a small creek system and it goes 40 some odd kilometers to a lake system. Well, maybe all that I need is a few water gate dams or a couple extra turn of valley gates or something like that. And that's where you can go back to WCSS and be able to say, hey guys, can we make sure that we have a couple of these extra pieces of equipment in there, because this is my worst case scenario for that site. And that's just the things that we're trying to know and understand when you're doing a cold eye review, right? So that you can catch it before that release ever happens. So one thing that you can do is, if you get onto the WCSS website, you'll see the link for it down here. Amy's just sent you something within the chat to gain extra information onto this. This is the WCSS Preparedness Self-Assessment, and that can be found into that forms page on the WCSS. But again, what it is, it's a risk analysis, everybody. It's that cold eye review. What are your risks? And no one understands that, because once, that's part of your mitigation strategies, is to be prepared, right? That preparedness portion, right? So it's an essential program. Please download that, have a look through it. It doesn't take a lot of time for you to walk through and fill these forms out and just see where you're at, making sure that you're gonna be covered. And again, the biggest things that you want to glean out of that is, what's my product? What's that potential volume or my worst case release scenario? Do I have the right equipment in order to facilitate a response to that? And do I have the right trained personnel to manage that release at the end of the day? Those understand your knowledge gaps. Once you understand your knowledge gaps, now you can start moving forward and into that preparedness end. So that preparedness end, when we start looking at that preparedness end, you want to know your ERP. Know that you have an ERP. So like a good leader, your ERP is there, right? That little catchphrase there that we all heard on TV. But just understand that ERP is to get you from point A to point B. It's essential to ensure that you grab that ERP right away, especially if you know that it's going to be a large scale release. And so have that readily available, whether you got a crash cart that has all that information in it, or it's sitting onto your desk. Just know and understand that you need access to that ERP. And again, what I mean by taking you from point A to point B is going to be, what do I do in the event of a release? Boom, it goes from here. Either I shut it in, control room shuts it in. What's the next one? I'm going to dispatch somebody to that site to verify. I'm going to contact the EOC in downtown Calgary. I'm going to start activating resources. And that's what your ERP is for, is to get you from that point A to point B. It doesn't give you the meat and potatoes of it. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but that it's essential that you have an ERP. You need an ERP. It's an auditable document with AER, so that's a must there for you. It will ensure adequate communication between your teams and the individuals by presenting an emergency management system like ICS. So if you're going back and you're looking at your ERP and there's no emergency management system in play into there, I strongly recommend that you end up looking to ICS. ICS Canada is what pretty much everybody's using. So when we start looking at this, what it is, what an incident command system is, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a set of terminology that you can apply to a site in order to gain structure. And if and when a spill breaks down, it's either through structure or communication at the end of the day. And so you need an incident command system there, because what it does is allow accountability for certain individuals. I'm going to go through it a little bit in a little bit more detail coming up, but just, you've heard it multiple times here today as well. I think it's a very important thing to have, because it literally takes you from a confused chaos of, wow, what's going on? We got oil going down the river, to, oh, okay, that's it. I'm not responsible for this, and this. This guy's responsible for it. All I got to do is look after this. And that's what it is. It takes a response from confused chaos to controlled chaos at the end of the day. So ERPs, they're not spill response specific though. They're not going to tell you how to carry out the response necessarily. They're not going to, they may have a section into there as release to water, shut in source if safe to do so, start containment on the land, utilizing conventional land spill techniques, right? Berms, barriers, trenches, whatever. If it's into the water, utilize booms to contain and skimmers to recover. That's it. They don't tell you where to go. They don't tell you at what angle you need to place your boom or anything of that nature. So necessarily. So again, that's why I'm saying they're a guide to get you from point A to point B. Again, they're also not going to tell you maybe how to set up your staging areas or where to set up your staging areas in the event of a release, where your control points are located, and again, how to install the proper containment at the end of the day. Ensure that your ERP is flexible, and remember to activate your ERP on every call. What we mean by this is you don't necessarily have to do a full rollout of your ICS system or a full rollout of your entire ERP, but you will require documentation. You know, I get that you guys get multiple calls a day, even, right? Oh, I got an odor complaint here. Somebody sees some wetness on one of their leases, and it could be a spill. I get those calls, and I understand that. But if you think about it, you're almost activating your ERP anyway, because what you're doing is you're getting the phone call saying, yeah, okay, I'll take that. Okay, odor complaint. You write that down on a piece of paper. I got an odor complaint. Here's my landowner's name. Here's his contact number. Okay, let's send somebody to go verify that it's even happened. They go to verify that it's happened. You're documenting time, you're documenting who went, they come back, no issues. It's just whatever, rotting vegetation in a slough versus H2S. Okay, and now you can close that off. So you can be writing that on your 214As and or on a 201. It doesn't really matter. And if you don't know the forms that I'm talking about, this is why our ICS will become very important for you, is to know that certain set of terminology at the end of the day. But as you become more familiar with it, what it is a 214A, as an example, is just my own personal notes. This is my personal notes to the events that happened for me during that day, versus a 201 is more of like that incident briefing form. This is everything that happened. But where I'm going with this is that's documentation. Documentation is key to any release. If you didn't have it documented and written down, it didn't happen. Not that the spill didn't happen, but that you didn't do anything about it. And so what I'm saying here is that little scrap piece of paper that you just started documenting information on, just write 214A onto it. And if the event starts to increase, now it does become something, you already have the start of the initial documentation. Now you can start activating your incident command post coming off of that. So like I say, your ERP within there should be flexible to just say, hey, if it's this type of event, all that I want you to do is start that initial documentation phase, because if it goes into litigations or a court of law and you don't have that written down, that could come back and bite you. So where I'm saying is, if you're just writing this information down, you're writing 214A onto it, because if you don't have the correct form for it, or your own internal forms, you can now take that, put that into a file and file it. At least you have it there. But again, if that spill was to become bigger and the event a little larger, you're going to need to ensure that you have that documentation that you followed your own ERP. Is where I'm going with that. So almost every call that you take, whether it's just an odor complaint, you should be following your ERP. What does your ERP provide you? It's going to provide you with tools such as this, right? You know, if you're looking on the right hand side of that, that's your incident command system, right? So basically, it's a chart that you have there. And the bonus with ICS is, if you're looking at it, it's just a series of terminology and boxes. That's it. With any response, like I say, you need structure and communication. And if you don't have that, I can guarantee you every time that spill will collapse, it'll implode onto you. You need to be able to just simply get out there and say, who's in command and control of this? Somebody needs to take charge. Whether you're the first person out there and you're managing until somebody of equal or greater qualification comes in to relieve you, or if you have a defined structure in place where this is going to be your IC and they'll manage it, they'll still manage it till that point that they get there, and then you can hand that over. But all it is saying, I'm in command and control here. And then what do I need? This is what I need. I need to start getting boom out there, and I need to start building a plan, because Mark told me that I needed a plan for it, and then I need somebody to go put that boom in. Well, that's the bonus of ICS, is that I have certain boxes that I need to fill for that. I'm in command. I'm up into the IC. I need to start ordering equipment. There's logistics. Who's ordering that equipment? You put somebody's name into it. Who's writing that containment and recovery plan? Well, now they're going into planning. And or who's going to put the actual boom into there? They're going under the operations end. And so that's all it is now you've gained structure. Now you know who's looking after what. Because on the onsets of a spill, everybody wants to do the right thing. Everybody wants to do the right thing. They're there, they're getting in there, they're making phone calls, but you can get a lot of overlap and a lot of frustration when things aren't moving and shaking, and you don't know who you're supposed to report to or who's looking after certain portions of that spill. So to gain an ICS structure is essential. You put this up, and I guarantee you, when you get out to a spill, if it's a larger type release or into water, and you can see a little bit of confusion there. And as soon as you pop this chart up and you start populating a couple of the boxes, you don't have to fill out the whole thing. Trust me, don't fill out the whole, you don't necessarily have to fill out the whole thing, but just populate what you need. You will see it go from to this level right here. Now it's a day-to-day event, right? That's it. It's just a day-to-day event. You're looking after this, you're looking after that, don't get me wrong, there's a sense of emergency associated with it, but it's pretty straightforward, because now you don't have to manage everything. You just got to manage a couple people underneath you. And that's a bonus of ICS. And as I need a job task, I add a box. Something else, I need a staging off. I need somebody to look after staging. Well, I add a box. I need somebody to look after wildlife. I add a box. That's it. That's all ICS is to gain you some type of structure so that you can communicate and disseminate information up and down throughout the system. The other thing that it should be giving you within your ERP is this planning P. You should be managing all your responses through objectives, right? So from your objectives to your strategies to your tactics, and you're moving it out that way. And the bonus of where this planning P comes in is it's kind of walking you through what you need to do. You got the event, you're notifying all the parties, right? Internal, external resources, your stakeholders, right? Your regulatory bodies. You're doing your initial response and assessment, getting out and seeing what it's all about. You do initial incident brief, right? Now you're doing an initial incident command meeting with everybody. So you're getting everybody on board. You're gaining all the information. You're starting to collect all the information. Now you're at a point where you got a lot of your personnel coming into one centralized spot, hopefully within your ICP, your incident command post, which will be on site. Your ICP and how you manage your sites will be from on site, not from the glass towers in downtown Houston, downtown Calgary, Edmonton, wherever. It happens from the site, because you can't have somebody in the downtown corridor trying to manage the site when they've never seen it. So if they want to manage it from there, please just invite them down. You come down here, you can manage it from here. Fantastic, right? Takes the pressure off for you. But that's that flow of how it should work. And now you're just at a point where you got all your resources here. You're populating a bunch of boxes, and now it's like, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? And so now you start basing it on an operational period, whether it's a 12-hour operational period, a 24-hour operational period, a week operational period, whatever it's going to be. Now you're at a point where I'm starting to get some resources here. I'm starting to gain more people. I still got to get this figured out. But now we're at a point of, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? How do we become organized enough where it's just not off the cuff? Do this, do this, do this. It's like, what do we need to do tomorrow? And that's where the rest of the planning P comes in, because now you sit there and you prep for tactics, and you're bringing everybody in and you're saying, what do we need to do tomorrow? Well, we have already started mobilizing resources to this control point and this control point. We still got 3 other control points to put in. Okay, well, let's make a point of getting these 3 in tomorrow. So you start understanding within these tactic meetings where you're going the next day, what resources you need. I need 2 boats. I need 2 boat operators. I need 3 deckhands. I need 5 land crew to help move the boom and stuff down. I need a skimmer, and then it's going to go into recovery. And then I got a recovery crew that consists of this, this, and this. But what it's doing is listing out what you're doing, how many resources you need as far as personnel, and what equipment that you're going to need. That's gaining some pretty good structure. That's gaining some pretty good understanding of what you're doing. And so as it goes from there, and you've developed all 3 of these now, it's going into the planning meetings. What additional plans do we need to develop? Here's the start of what our tactics, what our strategies and tactics are going to be. What do we need to further do? Additional plans, what additional mapping, et cetera. And when you start to developing that, and at some given point of time, it's going to come down into realistically your 204, right? And so, or your 201, like your incident action plan, pardon me. And so from that incident action plan, the IC, the incident commander, looks at it, says, yeah, great job, guys. Like, this is exactly what we need to be able to do, but I want to ensure the safety of these people going down on over here. So let's make sure that we tackle that. And you talk about it. He approves it, signs it off. Regulators have a look at it. They're signing it off too, maybe, or they're having a look at it and they're giving you the thumbs up. Now you're done. Now you're planning for the next day. Right away, right at the end of it, you're planning for the next day, and that gets into that operational flow. This initial response, this emergency phase, realistically, it should be kind of within the first kind of 3 to 4 days. You should be kind of out of that real panic mode, regardless of the size of that spill, because by that time you should be having that system in play, the rest of that planning P to say, okay, what are we doing the next day? Let's get ourselves organized, and it's an easy way to manage that. So those are 2 good key things that you should be taking away, having good access to within those ERPs. Now, what you have here is the WCSS Oil Spill Contingency Manual. Your WCSS Oil Spill Contingency Manual is there to supplement that corporate ERP. We'd indicated earlier that your ERP is not going to give you the meat and potatoes. It's not going to tell you what degree angle to put that boom, what skimmer you should be using, what's your are you going to do an in situ burn? How are you going to do it? That type of thing. But what it's doing is giving you the tools to help you onto that ground floor initially. So it's there to help to supplement both your corporate ERP and your safety manual, from a simple fact that it's going to be like you need your safety manual out there, obviously, because what's my SDS for this product? Let me have that. Now, what are my PPE requirements in order to manage that type of product? And then when we start looking at the oil spill contingency manual, it's going to give you basically kind of in general 4 different categories that are going to help support the rest of the operations. And this manual is designed around, well, you can see it's what is designed around emergency preparedness and response for Canadian standards, and that's the code associated with it, right? So it's developed around that, so it's not something that WCSS said, hey, let's just throw something out there. It's actually designed around something. And those 4 main categories are as such: contacts, checklist, documentation, and maps. And so those contacts, they outline your contact information likely required during the initial stages of your response. It's going to give you access to like a spill report form, kind of that 201. So you're starting to gain information, right? This is here's a drawing of what it looks like. This is kind of where it is, where it's going. Like I say, kind of in and around that 201. Your company resources, any handouts available. So these company resource, this will be one of the ones that that Amy's putting out there for you. Just make sure that you have those into there. Where are your SMEs? Where are your subject matter experts? Where's somebody that can, your SMEs as far as sampling, as far as containment, as far as recovery, as far as waste management, as far as wildlife management, any of those plans. If you got SMEs associated with that, where are you finding those? What are your additional resources? Where am I going to find somebody that can operate a drone? Where am I going to find my helicopter companies? Because darn well, if it hits a water body, that should be kind of within one of your first kind of 5 calls is to jump in a chopper and fly it when it hits a water body, so you can see where that advancing plume is going. So this is what I mean. You need to have all that information up front and ready to go, because if you don't, you're going to be scrambling. You're like, oh, no big deal, Trev. I grabbed my little yellow Bible there, my little Canadian oil fields service directory guide, and I'll start flipping through that. Well, good on you. I get that. But next thing you know, you're flipping to this vac truck company. Hey, vac truck company. Oh, no longer in service. Hey, COVID put you out. Man, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, next one. Did all that. Oh, okay. No, you're down, your equipment's down. Okay, next one. Oh, you got some trucks. Oh, but they're busy till tomorrow. I can't get them till tomorrow. And you start going through that. That's time that you don't have on a response. And so this is what I'm saying. If you can have some of those resources in play, that would be fantastic for you. It also gives you the WCSS contact information. Who do I call? What area? Who are my custodians? If you're looking for, somewhere in area P, you're looking at proactive. Kale, what's Kale's contact information? Because you want to try and get him out there as quick as possible. If you know that it's into a river, that's kind of one of those first kind of 5 is contacting WCSS, start mobilizing that equipment out. You can be giving Kale a call. Hey, Kale, can you mobilize this equipment for me? He's like, you bet. Where do you want it and what time? And he'll be there for you. And it's going to give you all your other contact information, such as your executive or all your steering committees, your chairpersons for those areas. You can help draw into them because they got a well of experience as well. So emergency services, local resources that I talked about, and your government contacts, right? Whether it's for Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, it lists out all your contact information to get in touch with those regulatory bodies, because again, that is kind of one of those first 5 phone calls is to those people to make them aware that they have a release. Your checklists are pretty straightforward. Your checklists are fantastic, because when you get out onto site, you're like, oh man, how do I need to set up a decon area? Decon, and you flip through there. Well, this is what you need to do, right? Because it's going to tell you, you're going to zone off your spill, hot, warm, cold. If you're zoning off your spill, hot, warm, cold, it's going through within your hot zone. These are the certain things that you need to look at is this, and this. And it's just, yeah, I got taken care of that. Yeah, I got security. Yeah, I got signage up to tell me that I'm going in the hot. Yeah, I got decon into my warm zone. Yeah, into my cold zone, I got this, and this. And that's the whole premise behind these checklists. It's, I haven't been doing this a long time, but in 30 years that I've been playing in oil, I still go back to the manual every once in a while, because it's like in the heat of the moment, you're like, oh man, did I forget about something? The information's already there. It's already been developed for you. So to grab it and just give it a quick flip through, oh yeah, maybe I need to add that. You still can do it. It's a great resource. The checklist, you can see them here just as well as I can, right? You can read through them. These are all the highlighted items to it on that give you the kind of some of the things that you don't think about all the time, right? Whether it's hazard assessment, land assessment, water courses, again, you guys can read this just as well as I can. When we start going into this area here, that documentation phase within the oil spill contingency manual, it refers to the type of information that must be tracked to stay organized, as well as it goes through the equipment lease agreement. So if you're calling, example area P, Kale, you're calling Kale and you're saying, hey, Kale, can I get this equipment out? Okay, great, sign the lease agreement. I'll forward it over to you, or get online and download the paperwork, get it filled out and send that off. It's just saying that you're taking ownership to that piece of equipment. And what it goes for 2 different ways. One, you're taking ownership of that equipment because you break it, you buy it type thing. But it's your resource. It's there for you. But what it also tells is that, it goes into the live equipment report that's also on the WCSS website. And that live equipment report tells me that, yeah, this is where this equipment is located, but right now it's out on a release. So now I need to maybe get it from another area for support. So this is just some of the documentation that you will need when you get out to a site, and you'll find that information in there. So like I say, run ICS. If you're running ICS, a lot of this stuff is going to be taken care of there for you, right? Because you're filling out those forms accordingly. One thing that I really like about the manual, just by using it multiple times, is the maps. Because they're going to give you your critical and non-critical control points. And what is a control point, we'll talk about here in a minute. But what we're looking at here is these maps are great because I can grab my little yellow binder off the shelf. I can throw it out. I can have it on the table with my ERP and my and the safety manual. I can pull the map out of the back and I can open it up, and you're going to see a map just like you see in front of you. And then it's going to tell me, you know what, if I had a release somewhere up in here, and this is obviously on the Bow River, where's my next downstream control point where I know that I can get access down there to start containment and recovery? And so you're following it down, oh, right there, control point 104. Now I know that's control point 104. I flip to the back of the manual and it gives me a control point, my control point paperwork. And so this is my control point. So we're giving you this one here. You guys, if Amy hasn't sent that to you prior, I'm pretty sure she has. And if you got that earlier, please feel free to open it up, because you can see it a little larger than life than maybe you can on my screen. But what it's doing is giving you everything that you need, the tools that you need to say, how do I get down there and what resources do I need when I'm down there? So if you're looking into the top, it's giving you the specific details at a closer level. Well, it's already telling me that I got a lock gate. So now I flipped in the next page and it's going, who's my landowner, contact information, authority, Tabor of MD. So that's probably their lock gate. Game on. I'm going to give them a call and say, hey, listen, can I get somebody down there to open this gate? Or just making you aware that I'm going to use my master key and I'm going to open that gate, and I'll pay you for the lock later, right? But now you're getting down to there, and it shows you the distances to those locations. You got the larger map to give you the overview to say that this is where you're going. And it's giving you the written directions as well. Now, when you flip to the next side, this is where it's really critical, because what's going to happen is if you're utilizing these control points, that means somebody within the ICP and into the planning sections already determined that this is the point where you need to go in order to either set up a staging area and or maybe to start getting containment onto that water body. And they're looking at that, and when they're doing it, they should be handing these out to the individuals that are first going out the door. So, let's say it's you're called the area P equipment as an example, and you're getting that equipment moved out to that site. You can just say, Kale, I'm sitting at we want you to move to S406. Well, Kale, being a custodian and having good understanding of WCSS's operations, he's going to say, well, can you just send me that over? Just send me that over in an email. Now he's got it. Now he knows exactly where he's going. Or again, he can just go grab his phone, get onto the website, and I'm going to go website. I'm going to go control points. I'm going to go access to Abadata. I'm going to say I need this control point here, and it's going to show me the map right here. I can hit a direction 2, off he goes. And so this is important, is to get people to the right locations. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit of a caveat into there on a recommendation for you. Onto these control points, how you should really kind of manage these control points is you're going to be dealing with the spill site itself. Then you should be looking at your POE, that point of entry where it comes off the land into that water, and getting containment there first. Then you should be going down to your next available control point and starting to mob your resources there, to have that mentality of, well, I'm just looking at this control point sheet right here right now, and it's telling me that this thing is going 5 kilometers an hour. It's moving at 5 kilometers an hour. Holy smokes. That's going to take me a couple hours to get out there and a couple hours to install. If I'm the 3 hours, man, that's already 15 kilometers downstream. Well, where is that? Well, I'm going to look up in here. My next distance downstream control point is 60 kilometers. So if you have that quick thought of, oh, if I go down to 60 kilometers, I'm going to get ahead of that advancing plume and I'm going to be able to contain it. Well, now you just burnt all your resources way downstream. So when I'm recommending, take it or leave it, you secure your POE, you go down to your next available control point, you grab in this data sheet here, and you lock in containment right there. If it gets past you, it gets past you. It's called the laws of diminishing averages at that point, and you're starting to readjust for it. So, but your control point information on your data sheets here are giving you all the information that you need. Your lat longs telling you that you got a boat launch here. It's letting you know where you have potential staging areas. It's letting you know where you got site preparation, such as brushing and clearing. This is what you need to do. And that helps you in that planning side to be able to say, either I got a cement boat launch. Oh, this is cement and graded boat launch. Oh, this is fantastic. And now you're going, I don't need to start prepping this area. I don't need to start bringing in additional matting because it's not going to be wet. And it just helps that whole planning side at the end of the day. So these things here are critical. They're gonna help you immensely on a release. Preparedness training. So where we're going down is, we know that we have a release. We know that we need our ERPs and our contingency manuals. We know that we got control points, and we know that we got equipment from WCSS. Now I need to make sure that I got trained personnel associated with that. So trained personnel, I'm telling you, is essential. You're going to need it. A well-organized response takes place when people understand their roles, as well as the complexities that can occur on a spill. Baseline training like ICS 100 that Amy's given you a link to on how to get that. And if you guys need, and as well for ICS 100, and if you need the 200, WCSS can provide that as well. But it's a good thing to know and understand, because again, it's to know and understand the terminology associated with it and how it all works as far as structure and communication. But you need ongoing training. And so if you think, oh, I just taken 100, life's good, I don't need to know anything more, have a quick thought. Look at that consideration that's bolted down onto the bottom there. You just completed your first aid, right? We all got to take first aid 2.5 years ago. But now I'm being asked to perform effectively in a triage unit in a hospital. I'm going to be going in there like, what is going on? I don't know this, right? Yeah, I can put a Band-Aid on something, or I could splint somebody. I can, put a patch on them, whatever it's going to be, but that's not going to take care of the problem. And so I just want you guys to make sure that, you're taking some more training. More training is the better. The 500 series that the WCSS has is fantastic information to start getting you to here. Then I recommend when you start getting into the ICS, you got a little bit more role specific so that you know what you're doing in that specific role. Recommended minimum and annual training are corporate training expectations. Again, attending the WCSS area exercises, which you're doing here today, but make sure you're doing some in-house tabletop exercises as well. Those are essential. They're there to test your system, right? Before a spill happens. They're there to walk through and be like, oh yeah, we do need this. We do need this information. We noted it in our cold R review that we needed it. We didn't think that we needed it, but now that we're going through a tabletop exercise, yeah, we definitely need it. Because if you don't test the system, and then a release happens, because again, it's not a matter of if you're going to have one, it's a matter of when. You need to have a well-oiled machine at the end of the day, especially when it becomes a big one. ICS training, again, role specific would be ideal there for you. Then you're looking at functional exercises. So take the WCSS equipment out and conduct site specific training and deployment with your own personnel. You train them, put them, make sure that they can do it. I understand that there's a cost to having these people gone for a day, 2 days worth of planning, but it could save your company millions of dollars if they can effectively put in containment for you during the initial stages of a release. And then full scale exercises where you're putting the tabletop and your functionals into one full thing, right? People are making the calls directly from the field into the ICP, and the ICPs re-disseminating that information back down to the field, just to make sure that you got that well-oiled machine. The other types of training that we're looking at that I kind of talked about is the series, the Spill Responder Series 1 to 500. Great programs into there. A lot of good knowledge coming out from the people that are instructing onto those. If you're going to operate any boats, make sure that you got that Med A3 and the boat handling that WCSS puts out there. You cannot, although you got your PCOC, your own pleasure craft operator card, Canadian Pleasure Craft operating card, you cannot operate a WCSS vessel. So make sure that you have the correct training for that. And then again, oil spill containment and recovery and the incident command. Highly recommended. The other things you got access to in your preparedness programs and within WCSS, everybody, is go to that link up at the top. You can see this. Just go to the website, look at the training aspect to it, because you got the awareness DVDs. Those are great to have at a safety meeting. You're drawing a blank on what to talk about. Well, maybe talk about spill response. The awareness kits, the banners, these banners that you see here are fantastic, right? You put them up onto the side of the SRU and like the spill response unit that you have there, and away you go. This is what we're doing. We're doing this, and this is where it's going to go. It's fantastic. You also have access to these other things, the WCS YouTube videos, the orientation videos that you've already taken in order to be here. And then coming soon, there's going to be some additional e-learning modules to review, like oil spill containment and recovery in winter, in lakes, small water bodies and large water bodies. They're going to be, they're looking to be an excellent training tool there for you. So I would go to them. So now we're coming back down into the response, and the response, when we look at the response, is again, you have an audible ERP document. It's developed. Check. You got a documentation tools established. Check. You got a training pathway in place. Check. Now, response is the next function associated with it. So critical to a successful response is that activation of that corporate ERP.
Guess what?
You confirm that release has happened. You're activating that ERP. You're standing up your ICP. Now you start mobilize personnel and equipment again. Go to the live equipment report to know where that equipment is within your area and get it out there ASAP. ICS I talked about quite extensively here. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of ICS and the need for you guys to take that type of training and be familiar with it, because if a spill happens, it will be out on your sites. Okay. This is just some general flows to that response. Is again, incident command post is established into the field. Then you can start standing up your ECC or your EOC, either your emergency coordination center or your communication center or your emergency operations center somewhere in downtown, somewhere in your main offices. They're there to support your guys in your field. They can be starting to generate the plans within the ECC or your EOC or those areas there, because they're a duplicate of the operations down there from as far as ICS, but the field does all the work. So just stand both of those up. Use your ERP to activate all your responders, your planning resources, your oil spill contingency manual, determine where your control points are going to be, develop your incident action plan. Again, command approves that plan. And then you start getting the equipment, you start carrying out the operation, and finance looks after everything at the end of the day. That's ICS right there. That's how the system works. It's just like this. Some of the variables that you're going to have though out on spills, and there's going to be quite a few, as we just noted a couple into here, such as some consideration is weather. What if there's heavy rainfall and the water levels increase? Brett and Sherree were talking about that was their biggest challenge, was the fluctuating water levels. If we're looking at the Pembina release or any of the other releases that have happened to moving water bodies, that's the main cause, right? You got fluctuating water levels. Next thing you know, all your oil's sitting up here because it's sure in freshet. And when that water recedes, it strands that line out. Now you got a big bathtub ring there, and then the water's going to come back up again. But how do you start managing all that timber that's coming down? When you get a phone call and you got boom on a large river system, and they're saying, I got a football field worth of timber coming down on me, you're going to lose containment pretty darn quick. And it's just knowing and understanding that so that you can relay that back to your stakeholders at the end of the day, back to the media, back to your regulators, so that they can become aware and informed of what and how you're doing things. What is if there's a heat wave? So these are just some other variables that I really want you guys to consider as part of that management system, to know some of these things. How do you manage your work crews, and what kind of work support services are required at the end of the day? How do you address fatigue management? You know that within the first kind of 4 days, everybody's maxed out. Everybody's probably got about, especially if it's in a moving water body, probably about 4 hours worth of sleep in those first kind of 48 hours. That's it. How do you start managing that fatigue? And that's where you're saying, hey, you know what? I got a operations chief and I got a deputy operations chief, so that he can look after it when this guy's not there, or when you're starting to go into the different operational periods. That's how you manage that fatigue, right? Is to have those backups there. What will your response look like during a pandemic? How do you manage a large scale release right now? And what if somebody gets impacted? What happens if you get one example COVID number out there? Does that shut down your entire response? It may. Just keep that notable. That now, how am I going to relay that to my stakeholders? How do you manage on-site media and representation? You know, Les and Mark talked about that on some certain ways to do that, but you will need to be able to address that, and the social media aspect. So have those communication plans already pre-canned at the start of it. And then how will your team manage mechanical breakdowns? Because they're going to slow down your operations. These are just things that we need to manage at the end of the day, because equipment's going to break down. Things are going to go sideways. So you got to be able to adjust for that. And then how do you address lack of resources and procurement issues such as supply and demand? You guys, you just took out all the stock of gloves from whatever company you're supplying from. You just took out all their stock, and you just took out another stock, and maybe you're coming close to winter, and all the companies that have PFDs, because you're working in close to water, have packed all that stuff away. Where are you going to get it? You need to be able to react and have a good contact list there on where you can find these suppliers and these additional pieces of equipment. So again, whether it's PPE, whether it's sorbent material, whatever, you need to know who those resources are. So now we come that full suit on your recovery, your business continuity. How do you let your, Les talked about that. How do you let your customer know that you have an ongoing response? Hey, we got a response. We're going to be shut down for a little bit. Just letting you know that it's going to impact your operations. I don't know for how long. It could be 2 or 3 days, or it could be 5 or 6 weeks. But you have to make them aware. And then you also have to start looking at, how do I get my product to the end market at the end of the day? How do I bypass it? How do I rebuild that infrastructure so that I'm servicing my client? And in the same token, if you're doing all that, how do you manage those finances? Because there's going to be a cost. Again, the quicker you can get out there and the quicker you can identify, the less your costs are going to be. If you get out there and you're sitting there scratching your head for 4 or 5 days going, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. The spill's getting bigger. It's going to cost you more money. That's just the way that it is. So again, if you can start having all this stuff understood prior, it'll save you a lot more at the end of the day. But these are just some quick questions that you should be considering. And when you're looking at going through your cold eye review, do you have these types of things? And if you don't, good idea to start working on those. Demobilization plans, again, as we start getting closer to the end of the spill, I got the equipment out. At what point can I start releasing it and getting it back into service? You need to start looking at those. And then at the end of the day, do a cold eye, a hot wash, whatever terminology you want to use for that. What went well, what didn't go so well, so that you can address it and keep building and keep bolstering your programs you have out there. So that makes again, those are the 4 areas for a good comprehensive emergency management plan there for you guys. So thanks.
Trever, I would like to ask you, I know we've heard from each speaker today about the importance of ICS. Now, can you elaborate a little bit more on like what level of ICS would you recommend for people who are in a leadership position, the ones that are attending today? Would you go to 200?
I'd go to a 300. If you're more boots onto the ground, the 200. Those initial responders, if they're at least taking a 100, they can understand that terminology. 200 is giving you a little more information on how you can expand that. 3 is more into the paperwork side and getting a little bit more into detail with that. So I would assume go to that. But then it's the role specific is the key. So that you're not saying, oh, I took ICS 100. I can be the operations chief because I'm just looking at operations. Oof. Do you know everything to do with operations? Or you're an operational guy and you get thrown into planning.
Yeah, then what?
What do I all need? What are all my plans? Where am I getting these plans? Mapping? What do you mean map? What's SCAT? Now you got me talking about SCAT in here. And if you don't know the intricacies of it, you're gonna get swallowed up pretty quick. So again, 300 management for sure, 200 more into just anybody in your kind of command general staff so that they know it, but anybody into that should also have roles specific for that job that they're going to be doing, which would help immensely. So
Awesome. Thank you for that. And just I just would like to identify, like you did pick up on multiple variables that would happen in a spill, but what if there are more, or are there more? What would you do about that?
Oh, there's so many more variables out there that we didn't discuss. We were just kind of wetting the whistle there. To have that better understanding, I will go back to an SME. Have an understanding of who those SME, like those subject matter experts, bring them out, and they can help you pre-identify those situations that you may be getting into before they even happen, because these SMEs have been through it before. So
excellent point.
Rely on an SME.
I would like to point out, like you were talking about the oil spill contingency manual, and I think that Amy, she added the link to where you can download the app. The app is based on that contingency manual. It's meant for quick field decisions, but it also does lead you back to go and talk to a subject matter expert if you're in this type of a situation. So really good idea to go through that app before you have a spill, but it's there if you're experiencing a spill and you're right there in the field needing to do something. So
yeah.
Alan,
come on, Alan, you can't tell me that I'm getting old. I even shaved. You can't see the gray hairs coming in there.
Are you doing all right? A little bit less hair than back in high school, but hey, you're doing all right.
Yeah, fair enough, eh?
Trevor, did you have any other questions in your chat?
Yeah, I had what's required for a functionable exercise, and do we reach out to the WS chair and make arrangements? You know, Shannon, I'll leave that more to you. My understanding is for those functional exercises, they can just call their area custodians, mobilize that equipment out. But please, if I'm wrong, let me know.
You're not wrong. The main thing is that you would need to sign an equipment lease agreement if you haven't done so already. So, you know, if you need some assistance with planning your exercise, we can help you with that. But if you've already got everything in mind, but you're just lacking the equipment, get in touch, ideally with Darren Stang. He's our operations manager. He'll make sure that you get a signed equipment lease agreement. Amy will support that as well, and we'll just make sure that the equipment is available for you. So any questions, just feel free to give me a shout, or Amy or Darren. We're all here. Thanks very much for all your comments. Thanks for sticking with us today. I'd love to know what you think about this webinar platform. So make sure you include that. Otherwise, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you very much and take care.